Welcome in. Welcome in. How you guys doing? Okay. That's on. That's on. Let's check. Let's see what's going on here.
The Donald Trump administration is waging war on Venezuela, but this is part of a larger political war on Latin America. In the past few months, the U.S. government has imposed sanctions on the democratically elected president of Colombia, Gustavo Petro. Trump has also imposed 50% tariffs on Brazil. This is one of the highest tariff rates on earth, and Trump has been very clear that he's directly meddling in Brazil's internal politics. Moreover, Trump has repeatedly claimed that he's going to take over the Panama Canal and colonize this important geostrategic territory in blatant violation of the sovereignty of Panama. And Trump has been openly interfering in elections in Latin America. For instance, the Trump administration offered $40 billion in a bailout to try to save Argentina's right-wing libertarian president, Javier Milei, who's a close Trump ally.
And I'm doing something that I don't often do. I'm giving a full endorsement to him. We just endorsed him for president. As you know, he has a race coming up, and I'm sure he's going to do well. But now I think this hopefully assures it. And to the people of Argentina,
that's so messed up, bro.
So today I'm going to be explaining why Donald Trump is so aggressive in Latin America.
Hello sir, how are you doing? I am sorry I am not able to join in past few days.
Well, don't worry, bro. It's okay. You don't have to be sorry. I'm just here to talk, you know. I didn't go on live yesterday. It's okay, man.
In the entire Western Hemisphere.
I know it's more fun with friends, right? When you're around. Thank you, man. Gracias. Thank you. God bless you. How you been?
So U.S. corporations
hopefully you're doing good.
Exploit those resources and make lots.
I'm just editing videos for now.
Venezuela. How about we're buying oil from Venezuela? When I left, Venezuela was ready to collapse. We would have taken it over. We would have gotten all that oil. It would have been right next door.
And in these flagrant attacks on the sovereignty of Latin America, Trump has three main goals. One, he wants to exploit the natural resources of the region, including oil,
just wants
natural
money.
gas,
that's all he wants.
And other minerals and agriculture and water. With climate change, water is going to become more and more important. So Trump wants U.S. corporations to take over those natural resources so his billionaire friends can profit. That's the first goal. Number two is the Trump administration wants to prevent
all the millionaires are all into it.
Having close ties with China.
All the big millionaires that are the top S&P.
China has become the #1 trading partner of South America.
Doing good, sir.
So Trump is desperate.
That's good, excellent. Thank you for joining in and tuning in with me, bro. So, what do you want to talk about?
Is to remove all left-wing
checking all the videos that are.
And right now, it just so happens that the majority of the governments
maybe
in the region
could have
are
a
led
clip.
by left-wing leaders. And Trump wants to have more right-wing leaders in the region
who
will obediently serve U.S. interests, like Javier Milei in Argentina, like Daniel Noboa in Ecuador, like Nayib Bukele in El Salvador. And it's not a coincidence that these are the closest U.S. allies in the region. And just like in the first Cold War, Latin America was dominated by right-wing dictatorships. The vast majority of countries were not democracies. They were U.S.-backed puppet dictatorships. And essentially, this is what the U.S. empire wants to go back to today. These are the imperial goals of Trump's neo-colonial war on Latin America. And certainly this did not start with Trump. This goes back hundreds of years. But Trump has taken it to a whole new level. So today I'm going to be talking about the Trump administration's war on Latin America. And speaking of natural resources, let's talk about the U.S. war on Venezuela.
Makes it feel like the 1940s back again.
Oil reserves in the world. And the Financial Times published an article based on interviews with top U.S. officials.
The world was at war.
They admitted that the goal of the U.S. war on Venezuela is regime change. They want to overthrow Venezuela's independent left-wing government and install
got
a
one. I
right-wing
got
U.S.
one.
puppet. Now, Trump claims that supposedly he's attacking
I haven't been
Venezuela to
able
stop
to
the
get
flow of
anything.
drugs into the U.S. using war on drugs rhetoric. That's completely false. That's just the cynical excuse that the U.S. government is using to wage these wars of aggression in Latin America.
Same as user watching Trump and his stupid things. I like politically involved, but end of the day I avoid the conversations with people because people get aggressive when it's come to politics.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it's politics is just a show. It's the governments are all in it. They're all together. It's just it's a all show. It's like a theater. It's just like a movie. It's all fake. It's all the wars and conflicts are created. All the famines, all the even the what do you call it, the diseases, all the bad things that are happening in the world, they're all created by the people on top, and they also give the solution. It's very bad, but I know why it's happening. But do you guys have like a prophecy in India, anything about like antichrist and the savior, like anything coming back like as a prophecy trying to save the world? We have like a prophecy. The Mayans had it differently.
Devansh Karlupia said, absolutely right, I agree with you.
Yeah, it's unfortunately your vote doesn't count, neither does your freedom of speech. Even if we have freedom of speech, it doesn't matter. It won't change anything. Even if you go out and protest, protesting doesn't change anything.
Devansh Karlupia said, end of the day that all stuff it's cover up for big people.
Exactly, yeah, it's a big cover up. Exactly, it is. You're right about that. Yeah, this is all it's all propaganda. So I just like to hear other people's opinions. That's what I like to hear. I like to listen to all, even the people that don't. I know I'm not agreeing with anything because they're very. Let's just say they're not correct with the right thing to do morally. So they're trying to help people like Donald Trump, or let's just say people like Hitler, or people like just evil people. That's the people they're helping. There's a lot of people that are helping even if they don't know who they're helping.
Devansh Karlupia said, we have prophesied like while going to destroy, but no one gets saved by anyone.
Okay. All right. It's just I was just wondering. I know all cultures, especially the ancient cultures and anything from the old world, they all have prophecies. Every culture, it doesn't matter if it's India, Europe, or Latin America, or all America, even Alaska, up to Alaska and Canada, which is still America, it's just North America. But all continents, even Asia, they all have prophecies. So I was just wondering what's yours. The Mayan had one, but it was different from the Aztec. But they all have like prophecy of the end times or when the world's gonna end. I think they were talking about a spiritual sense, the 2012 Mayan or the Aztec calendar. I think they were talking about a different period, like just like the Chinese calendar. They were talking about a different period of time. And it's weird how the Chinese have it different, like get to every year. For the Mayans, it was like every thousand something cycle. It's all cycles, really. All right, let's see what goes on. Thank you, Devansh Karlupia. You know what's going on. Appreciate it. I think that's why we get together and talk commonly. We share the same vibration, or how people want to say it, but it's just a spiritual connection. Let's
America.
see what.
The Financial Times admitted, quote, the priority now is to force the departure of top Venezuelan government officials, end quote. And they made it clear that the Trump administration is making plans to potentially kill Venezuela's constitutional president, Nicolas Maduro. The Financial Times noted that there is the, quote, clear threat that if Maduro and his
They're trying
inner
to do
circle
another
cling to
Gaddafi.
power, the Americans may use targeted military force to capture or kill them, end quote. So this is blatant
They did it also to
neocolonialism like we saw in the 19th century. And the U.S. empire has two main goals other than
Chavez and the other
overthrowing the
one.
Venezuelan government. First,
They
the
took
U.S.
that guy
wants to
out.
exploit
That
Venezuela's
guy was taken
plentiful
out.
natural resources. And second, the U.S.
But
wants to
the
prevent China,
system wasn't
Russia,
broken.
and Iran from having allies in Latin America. I'm reading here from the Financial Times, quote,
Fidel
"At stake in
Castro, they
Venezuela
couldn't
are
take
the
him out.
world's
That's the
largest
guy that
proven
they
oil
couldn't
reserves
take
and
out.
valuable deposits of gold,
They failed to
diamonds,
take out,
and
actually. They
coltan.
failed to take out.
A U.S. ally in the last century, the South American nation moved into the
All
orbit
right.
of Russia,
What
China,
did I hit?
and
I hit
Iran
something.
under Hugo Chavez, the ex-army officer who led a Bolivarian socialist revolution from 1999. The FT, of course, did not mention
No aim
that
assist.
Chavez was democratically
I was
elected,
practicing
like
with
his
no aim
successor,
assist for a while.
Nicolas Maduro. And the U.S. government has a long history of carrying out coups in Latin America
It's very
to
difficult.
overthrow
Devansh
democratically
Kalupia.
elected
What's
leaders.
up, bro?
Said.
And we
Let's see.
We have ancient books written every record of but going to happen next summer. Some are exactly the same. Everything is written on the book.
Okay.
Stream elements.
Let's go.
Thanks for subscribing, Laurie Rochelle hugging face.
Let's go. Thank you, Stream Elements. Yes, it's a automated thing we have for each subscriber. Thank you, Lori Rochelle. Rochelle? I think it's Rochelle. I like that last name. It's a very beautiful name. Lori, appreciate it. Appreciate it so much. Hopefully you're having a wonderful day. Okay. Well, in my ancient culture, we have the
Devansh Kalupia
different.
said. We both are calm people, sir. That's why heart suit.
Oh, appreciate it, man. That's good. That's good to know. So yeah, that's very beautiful. I like. I think every culture has very calm people, but there's some cultures that are just very way off programmed, especially because the people were violent in some cultures. But that's in their blood. That's built in. That was programmed. That wasn't. You're not born violent. You're not born a psycho. You're not born homosexual, or we're not born a sinner, but we commit sins. You know, we're born clean. When we're born, we're not
Devansh
programmed.
Kalupia said. I don't understand why Trump do this. Why interfere with other countries' political issue? He didn't pay any attention to his own.
Oh, because he's doing the what the Illuminati couldn't do, like forever. They've been wanting to do this. It's a long story. It started from like back with Napoleon. That's the first guy they tried to use like that, and then we had Hitler. They used him, and then we had a lot of different regimes, what they call regimes, but they're just factions, their own little group. Like we had Fidel Castro, Chavez, and now we have Maduro. But the thing is that the thing is that they always want to take these guys out that they have so much power, and they have to obey with the dollar. So it's been about the dollar and the money, and who, if you can control the money with the dollar, any country, you indebt them for life, and they're just slaves. They're indebted slaves forever. So that's what they did to Gaddafi, and what was the other guy? Saddam Hussein. They did that. Of course, they had to take him out in order to gain power in the political field. It's all like they said. They've been wanting to do this for a long time. It's not new news. They just they just like they're just going in like fast. You've never seen this before. But yeah, they've done it a lot of times. It's not a first. It's not the first time. But they want the oil. That's what they want. They want the oil because Venezuela has the biggest reserves, more than us. What's this? The United Emirates, but it's the Sinai Peninsula, which is right now. uh, they it has a different name. I
See that
forget.
happening once again
I'll let
today
you know.
in Venezuela.
I forget.
The Financial Times also quoted an anonymous American businessman with interests in Venezuela, and he has been communicating with Trump, and he told the FT, quote, "What Trump wants in Venezuela is oil, minerals, and gold. He wants U.S. companies down there investing," end quote. So once again, this is a blatant colonial resource grab. The Financial
The
Times
last two
quoted a very
continents that are
wealthy
rich
right-wing
are
Venezuelan opposition figure who's
about
very close
like
to the Trump administration, and she admitted that, quote,
actually
the
actually if you really study everything is there's unlimited resources for us on the earth, except you don't have the money to mine everything, and you don't want to. The reason it's so bad, everything how it's manipulated, is like if you want to create a battery, you have to destroy the environment. It's but that was created by someone I don't want to mention, but that's the guy that's been funding all the wars and money, created the money a long time ago. But it's very evil scam. It's like you depopulate. It's like if you want to end the world or end and gain everything for yourself, you would have to destroy and kill a lot of people in order to keep it all for yourself. And that's the end goal for the rich. They just want to diminish as much people as possible and keep everything for themselves. But they're greedy. But that's the thing, is like we didn't need batteries back in the day to survive for our phones, basically. And it was gonna be wireless thanks to Tesla. We were gonna have there was no need for batteries. There is no need for batteries. It's wireless charge. You can just have a device without a battery, which was gonna be operated just for basic internet communication, basic phone, internet, and like just like the basics. No social media thing or whatever. It's just basic communication. And you didn't. I mean, back then people didn't need a calculator really. People did basic calculations. The only reason they needed to do complicated calculations was for the missile trajectories. That was the only reason they needed computers. That was the only reason they started computers. If you guys go into the history of it.
plan now is a capture of Nicolas Maduro, capture, kill, or capture, arrest, and take him out one way or another, end quote. So the strategy is for the U.S. empire to do either what it did to Panama in 1989, in which the U.S. invaded Panama and overthrew its government and arrested its leader.
How many
Or the other
governments have been
option is the
overthrown by
U.S.
the
war
USA?
against Libya in 2011, in
That's
which
my
the U.S.
favorite dude.
killed Libya's leader, Muammar Gaddafi,
This
and
guy,
collapsed the
Muammar Gaddafi. This guy, he revolted. One of the biggest revolters. He wanted to convert his own money. He did what Lincoln did versus the Illuminati. Convert his own money into gold, or convert it and just make a new dollar, basically. And with, but he backed it up with oil, and that's what the U.S. does. And you're taking off the market. That's and then now it's AI, but that's why it's all messed up game. Everything is all about AI right now. The chips, the chip war. We're in a chip war versus China, and then we have other wars going on, economic wars and stuff. But this guy was doing what Lincoln did to the. That's why they killed Lincoln.
in which the
Same
U.S.
thing. They have
killed
to take out the
Libya's
guys that
leader,
revolt
Muammar Gaddafi,
and create their own
collapsed
system.
the state. And still today, 14 years later, Libya is a failed state that has been in a constant state of civil war. And to oversee the U.S. war on Venezuela, it's not only Donald Trump, but it's Marco Rubio who is leading the charge, according to the Financial Times. Marco Rubio is simultaneously serving as
So
both
funny
the
how you
Secretary
picked
of
all
State
the
and the
guys that
National
are very
Security
bad at
Advisor.
their job.
And Rubio is a lifelong
But have very
neoconservative
perfect
war hawk
connections.
from Florida, and his entire political career has been dedicated to trying to overthrow the socialist governments in Cuba, Nicaragua, and Venezuela. This is his personal
I just want to see
lifelong
the aim assist.
obsession.
I don't
And
have no
back
aim
during
assist. I
Trump's
think.
first presidential term in 2019, Trump
Yeah.
launched another coup attempt in Venezuela. This failed, but during that previous coup attempt, in which the U.S. appointed the little-known right-wing opposition politician Juan Guaido as the fake so-called interim president of Venezuela, despite the fact that he never participated in a presidential election.
So
well,
funny,
during
huh?
that coup attempt, Marco Rubio had been lobbying the Trump administration to launch a military invasion of Venezuela to kill President Maduro. And now, of course, Rubio is the second most powerful person in the U.S. government after Trump in his second term. And Rubio is carrying out what he's been calling for years, which is a military
That guy does
war
show off an evil
on
face.
Venezuela to overthrow Venezuela's constitutional, internationally recognized government and install a puppet regime. In fact, some of Trump's close political allies are proud of the fact that this is a colonial war. On Fox News, the neoconservative Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who's a close Trump ally, and the Fox News host Sean Hannity, and Trump is a huge fan of Sean Hannity and often watches his show and talks about how much he likes Hannity. Well, in a Fox News segment, they floated the idea that the U.S. government should colonize Venezuela and turn it into the 51st state. So again, I repeat, this is 19th century style colonialism.
I had a chat with you this weekend, and I thought you had a pretty darn good idea, and you said you were going to share it with the president. I want to know if you did, and that is this opposition leader in Venezuela that won the Nobel Prize that said it really deserved to go to Donald Trump. Sounds like a pretty good leader to me for the people of Venezuela. And the end of narco-terrorism and a better relationship with the U.S. Or if they choose maybe the 51st state. I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
Now, as part of this colonial war in Venezuela, the Trump administration has carried out numerous attacks, not only in the Caribbean, but also now in the Pacific. The U.S. military has bombed numerous boats and killed dozens of people without trial, including not only Venezuelans, but also Colombians and poor fishermen from Caribbean countries like Trinidad and Tobago. There is no evidence whatsoever that these were drug traffickers. That is the claim that the Trump administration is making without any evidence whatsoever. That is the excuse
I want to see the residue
to justify
when you
waging this
explode
colonial
something,
war
and
in
especially
Latin
the
America.
kilos of
And one of the few
something.
leaders in the region
It should
who
be
has
in the
been
water,
bravely
bro.
speaking out against the U.S. war is Colombia's President Gustavo Petro. He has warned that the U.S. government is threatening to drag the entire region into a larger conflict and set Latin America on fire. And in response, the Trump administration has expanded its war that started on Venezuela, and now the Trump administration is also targeting Colombia, and the U.S.
have been very
Treasury has
tired.
imposed sanctions on the democratically elected sitting president
Just
of
wanna see what
Colombia,
happens.
Gustavo Petro. This is a blatant violation of the sovereignty of Colombia and its elected government. And this came after an angry post that Trump posted on his Twitter copy website, Truth Social, in which he attacked Colombia's president and he repeatedly misspelled the name of the country. It's Colombia with an O, but Trump repeatedly wrote Columbia with a U, like the university in New York City. And while misspelling the name of the country, Trump falsely claimed without any evidence that supposedly Petro is a, quote, illegal drug leader, end quote. This is
happened here?
completely
Oh,
false,
somebody got the
and this is a
win.
blatant attack, once again, on the democratically elected sitting president of a foreign country. This is blatant imperialism. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, who's a billionaire hedge fund manager from Wall Street,
Should we leave it in?
he falsely claimed, this is completely false, he said, since President Gustavo Petro came to power,
I don't think I
cocaine
got
production
anything,
in
but I
Colombia
just
has
wanted to
exploded to record high rates. That is a blatant lie. Independent experts have in fact shown that cocaine production has fallen under President Petro, and he pointed out on Twitter that what the U.S. Treasury is saying is a lie. Coca leaf cultivation under his government has been falling. He reduced rates from 13% in 2022 to 9% in 2023 to 3% in 2024. And he noted that, on the contrary, his government has seized more cocaine than in the entire history of the world. In fact, cocaine production grew very significantly in Colombia under the previous right-wing president, Iván Duque, who was a close U.S. ally and a personal friend of Donald Trump. And in fact, during Trump's first term, Iván Duque's government in Colombia played a key role in the coup attempt in neighboring Venezuela. Juan Guaidó, the U.S.-backed coup leader, was working in Colombia, carrying out operations to try to overthrow the Venezuelan government. And in May 2020, there was a botched invasion of Venezuela carried out by mercenaries who were trained by U.S. Army Special Operations Forces in northern Colombia. And they traveled from Colombia into Venezuela as part of this U.S.-backed failed invasion to try to overthrow the government of Nicolás Maduro. In fact, if you know anything about the recent history of politics in Colombia, you would know that the worst drug dealers in the country have always been the closest U.S. allies, including, for instance, the right-wing former president, Álvaro Uribe, one of the closest U.S. allies in all of Latin America. U.S. intelligence agencies have known for decades that he is a drug trafficker who is a close personal friend of Pablo Escobar and worked closely with the notorious Medellin cartel. But because Uribe is a right-wing multimillionaire oligarch who's extremely anti-communist and very anti-Cuba, anti-Venezuela, and anti-Nicaragua, this drug leader has been one of the closest, most obedient U.S. allies in Latin America. And in fact, at the same time that the Trump administration is waging war on Venezuela and now a political war on Colombia based on false claims that it's a war on drugs. Meanwhile,
I gotta check that out. Look, his body language says it all, bro. It's like, yes, daddy, I'll do it all. It's like, yes, daddy, I'll do it all. His body language says it all, bro. He's like, I'll simp for you, Mr. Bush. I'll simp. I'm your simp. I'll do whatever you want. His body language, guys, it says it all, guys. It's just so funny. Oh, that's so funny. For me, it's just interesting.
U.S. allies in Latin America. And in fact, at the same time that the Trump administration is waging war on Venezuela and now a political war on Colombia,
Trump. I feel sorry for
based
that
on
dude.
false claims that it's a war on drugs. Meanwhile, Marco Rubio has been openly praising Álvaro Uribe, one of the worst drug traffickers in the history of Latin America. And on the 21st of October,
I don't think I have
Rubio
anything
published a
interesting
tweet praising
except for just one
Uribe
clip.
and thanking the Colombian judicial system for not imprisoning this corrupt drug trafficking criminal. And then back in July, when the Trump administration started this new coup attempt in Venezuela in this war, Rubio published another tweet praising this drug trafficking criminal, Uribe, and he claimed that, quote, former Colombian President Uribe's only crime has been to tirelessly fight and defend his homeland, end quote. This is completely absurd. The U.S. government has known for decades, according to declassified U.S. cables, that Uribe is a drug lord who works closely with cartels. And we've also known for decades that Uribe has worked closely with right-wing death squads in Colombia who have killed left-wing leaders and labor leaders and land defenders and indigenous leaders on behalf of large corporations who want to get access to land and resources in Colombia, and they want to kick the poor and indigenous people living off
My
that
high
land.
sense.
And they use violence. And they use death squads and paramilitary groups, which have been closely linked to Uribe and his criminal gang, which again are the closest U.S. allies in Latin America. And in fact, one of the family ranches of Uribe was used as a base for a death squad. We've known this all for decades. He's one of the worst criminals in Latin America. So this war that Donald Trump is waging on Latin America has nothing to do
what about the Mexican
with drugs.
cartels?
The so-called war on drugs was always a cynical excuse used by the U.S. empire to justify interfering in the internal affairs of foreign countries. And we see the same thing happening again today. And I have to add an interesting little note here, which is that apparently President Gustavo Petro of Colombia agrees with me, because this is something that I tweeted. I said the blatant attack on Colombia's sovereignty has nothing to do with drugs and everything to do with imperialism. And Gustavo Petro followed me on Twitter and he retweeted this tweet,
economic
which
report
apparently means that he agrees at least partially with this analysis that I'm making today, which is that the Trump administration is using the so-called war on drugs as a cynical excuse in order to wage a neo-colonial war on Latin America to try to reimpose hegemony in the Western Hemisphere. And the U.S. empire sees Gustavo Petro as a threat to U.S. dominance in the region because historically, Colombia was the single most important U.S. ally in Latin America. And under Gustavo Petro, who's the first ever left-wing president of Colombia, the country has been pursuing a more independent foreign policy. And in fact, under the leadership of Gustavo Petro, Colombia has now boosted its ties with China and has joined China's global infrastructure project, the Belt and Road Initiative. This has terrified the U.S. empire, and hawkish U.S. think tanks are warning that China's influence in Latin America is growing, and this is one of the main reasons why the Trump administration is being so aggressive in Latin America, trying to recolonize the region. And essentially what the Trump administration is telling the region is that it cannot have close relations with China and also Russia and Iran. Now, during the first Cold War, China did not really have relations with most countries in Latin America. However, in the past 20 years, China's economic relations with Latin America have grown significantly. And in fact, today, China is now the #1 trading partner of South America and Central America. Now, there are a few exceptions to this. One is, of course, Mexico, which is the southern neighbor of the U.S., and over 80% of Mexico's exports go to the U.S. They have a free trade agreement, so Mexico is kind of an outlier. But if you exclude Mexico, Latin America's largest trading partner is China. If you look at South America, China is already the #1 trading partner of Brazil, Venezuela, Peru, Chile, Argentina, Bolivia. But Colombia still does more trade with the U.S. because historically Colombia was dominated by these right-wing oligarchs who were very corrupt and linked to drug trafficking, but they made sure that everything in the Colombian economy revolved around exporting to the U.S. and buying imports from the U.S. Well, that situation has been changing, and it's likely that if Colombia goes in a more independent direction, in a few years, China will be the #1 trading partner of Colombia as well, which is another reason why the Trump administration is being so aggressive against Colombia, because the U.S. wants to meddle in Colombia's internal affairs, because an election in Colombia is coming up in May of 2026, in just several months, and the Trump administration is desperate to put back in power a right-wing, multimillionaire oligarchic puppet who will serve U.S. interests at the expense of the Colombian people. And, of course, the interests of U.S. corporations who want to exploit the resources of the countries in the region. Like Venezuela, Colombia has a lot of natural resources, and it's a major producer of oil. So Trump is blatantly meddling in Colombia's internal affairs as its election comes up in several months. And he's sending a message to not only politicians in Colombia, but across Latin America, that if you don't obediently do what the U.S. empire wants, the U.S. will impose sanctions on you, try to carry out a regime change operation, or even militarily attack you and threaten to kill you like what Trump is doing to Venezuela right now. And what all of this shows is how the Trump administration is bringing back a colonial doctrine that is more than 200 years old. We're talking about the Monroe Doctrine, which was declared in 1823, in which the U.S. empire, which was just starting to expand at the time, essentially declared that all of Latin America was its imperial backyard, in scare quotes. And the Wall Street Journal published a very interesting article based on interviews with top U.S. government officials who are referring to this as the Don Roe Doctrine. This is how the Wall Street Journal described this colonial Don Roe Doctrine. Treating the Western Hemisphere, quote, as an extension of the U.S. homeland where Washington will act unilaterally to root out perceived enemies, loyalty is rewarded and defiance can carry a price, end quote. And this is exactly what we've seen. Argentina's right-wing libertarian president Javier Milei is an obedient U.S. puppet, and the Trump administration is giving him $40 billion to try to save him to meddle in Argentina's elections. But then independent leaders who stand up to the U.S. empire and who defend their country's sovereignty face severe punishment. So the U.S. is trying to kill the Venezuelan president, Nicolas Maduro, and the U.S. just imposed sanctions on Colombia's president, Gustavo Petro. So this is what U.S. government officials refer to as the Don Roe Doctrine. And the Wall Street Journal noted that U.S. Southern Command, which is the part of the U.S. military that oversees operations in Latin America, Southern Command, or Southcom, has found itself on the front line with more resources and a vastly expanded mission.
I'll leave it there.
And this report noted that half of the countries visited so far by Secretary of State Marco Rubio have been in Latin America and the Caribbean. And in fact, the first trip that Marco Rubio took abroad as Secretary of State was to Panama, where he threatened Panama. He visited the Panama Canal and said that the U.S. wants to take it over. And the Trump administration forced Panama to withdraw from China's global infrastructure project, the Belt and Road Initiative, which they're now trying to force other countries in Latin America to leave as well. And so-called defense secretary, although he actually renamed himself the war secretary, Pete Hegseth, has rebranded Trump's slogan of America First and the Americas First. So their goal is to impose control over all of the Americas, from Canada in North America, which Trump jokes about making the 51st U.S. state, down to the southern tip of South America in Argentina. And the Wall Street Journal interviewed Steve Bannon, a close Trump ally who was actually the CEO of Trump's previous presidential campaign. And then in 2017, Bannon served as Trump's top advisor. And Bannon referred to this proudly as Monroe 2.0. So this is just neocolonialism, colonialism 2.0. And Bannon argued that it's actually easier to sell this war in Latin America to the so-called America First base, these MAGA Republicans, rather than the non-stop U.S. wars in the Middle East, in West Asia. So what Bannon is admitting is that the MAGA Republicans are not anti-war. They're not anti-interventionists. They are completely pro-imperialist and colonialist. They simply want to change the target. And instead of war on Russia, they want war on Latin America. And the Wall Street Journal pointed out this is not new. During Trump's first term as president, top U.S. officials invoked the colonial Monroe Doctrine in order to justify coup attempts in Venezuela, Cuba, and Nicaragua. This included Trump's neoconservative national security advisor, John Bolton, a neoconservative war hawk who was one of the architects of the Iraq War in the George W. Bush administration, and also Trump's CIA director turned Secretary of State, Mike Pompeo. Both of those neocons invoked the Monroe Doctrine during the coup attempt that Trump carried out during his first term against Venezuela. And in fact, John Bolton boasted on CNN that it was a coup attempt.
One doesn't have to be brilliant to attempt a coup.
I disagree with that. As somebody who has helped plan coup d'etat, not here, but other places, it takes a lot of work.
Bro just gave himself up. I was gonna say he didn't like that. The guy really challenged him with the question. It's a psychological question. It's like saying you have to be very intelligent, right, to do this, but or you don't have to. Basically, he's using reverse psychology to see if he's gonna react to it, which he did. He clearly did react to that.
I do want to ask a follow-up. When we were talking about what is capable, what you need to do to be able to plan a coup, and you cited your expertise having planned coups.
I'm not going to get into the specifics, but
Yeah.
Successful coups?
well, I wrote about Venezuela in the book, and it turned out not to be successful. Not that we had all that much to do with it, but I saw what it took for an opposition to try and overturn an illegally elected president, and they failed. The notion that Donald Trump was half as competent as the Venezuelan opposition is laughable. But I think there's another...
I feel like there's other stuff you're not telling me, though.
I think I'm sure there is.
So the Wall Street Journal has described Trump's war on Latin America as his new war on terror, in scare quotes. And just like the first so-called war on terror, this is also a cynical imperial war based on lies. It's not actually about terror. Like the war on drugs was not actually about drugs. This is about imperialism. And the Wall Street Journal pointed out that Trump has also been rewarding obedient U.S. puppets in Latin America, like, for instance, El Salvador's right-wing leader, Nayib Bukele, and Argentina's U.S. puppet leader, Javier Milei. And I was surprised to see that the Wall Street Journal even quoted part of the speech that was given by Bolivia's left-wing president, Luis Arce, at the United Nations General Assembly this year, 2025, in which he warned of the return of Monroeism that, quote, asserts that the Americas belong to the North Americans, creating conditions for a new moment of neo-colonialism, end quote. That was the warning made by Bolivia's president, Luis Arce. And of course, in 2019, the first Trump administration backed a violent coup in Bolivia that overthrew Bolivia's democratically elected socialist president, Evo Morales. And on the subject of the U.S. attacks on Latin America, I have to say the Financial Times published another article that was quite good, that described how Trump is bringing back colonial gunboat diplomacy in his attacks on not only Venezuela, but other countries in the region. This article pointed out that the CIA has carried out coups in Latin America against democratically elected left-wing leaders like Guatemala's president, Jacobo Arbenz, in 1954. And there are dozens of other examples. And this FT article acknowledged that the CIA tried to assassinate Cuba's revolutionary leader, Fidel Castro. And according to declassified U.S. government documents, the U.S. empire tried to kill Castro 638 times.
They failed.
Which is the most assassination attempts against a single person in the history of the world, at least for which we have documents. So this is the reign of terror that the U.S. empire has carried out in Latin America. And the Financial Times cited research done by a historian at Columbia University in New York who found that between 1898 and 1994, the U.S. constantly intervened in Latin America and overthrew at least 41 governments in 100 years. And since 1994, the U.S. interventions in Latin America have only increased. In fact, according to data published by the U.S. government, the U.S. military has intervened in every single country in Latin America except French Guiana, which is a French colony located in the northern part of South America. But the U.S. military has been engaged nonstop in this region for centuries, and the U.S. military has invaded many countries, including within recent memory, Panama and Grenada, and basically Nicaragua. The CIA carried out a terror war on Nicaragua in the 1980s. Like the terror war we see being carried out against Venezuela.
All right, a minute, 13 seconds.
The Financial Times also importantly pointed out that in the 1840s, U.S. colonialists invaded Mexico in a war of aggression, and the U.S. empire stole half of Mexico's territory. They colonized the northern half of Mexico, including the present-day U.S. states of California, Arizona, Texas, Nevada, Utah, and New Mexico. That's why it's called New Mexico, because it was part of Old Mexico until the U.S. colonial war of aggression against Mexico from 1846 to 1848. The Financial Times also admitted that the U.S. military occupied numerous countries in Central America and the Caribbean during the so-called Banana Wars, in which the U.S. government was acting on behalf of U.S. corporations like the United Fruit Company, now known as Chiquita, or Standard Fruit, now known as Dole. So there's a long history of blatant U.S. imperialism in Latin America. And Trump's war in Venezuela directly mirrors that colonial history. The Financial Times pointed out that the Trump administration has three main goals in this colonial war in Venezuela. Those are the goals I talked about earlier. I think this is correct analysis. One, Trump wants to overthrow Maduro's independent left-wing government. Two, Trump wants U.S. companies to take over Venezuela's oil and other natural resources. And three, Trump wants to kick out China and Russia from Latin America and prevent countries in the region from having their own independent foreign policy and having their own consensual relations with China and Russia. As the Financial Times put it, quote, Trump has made no secret of his desire to push Beijing out of a region he sees as a sphere of U.S. influence, end quote. Wow. And this article pointed out that it's not a coincidence that Trump's biggest role model was the ardent imperialist William McKinley. And as president of the U.S. at the end of the 19th century, McKinley vastly expanded the U.S. empire. He colonized Hawaii, Puerto Rico, the Philippines, and Cuba, and he set the stage for building the Panama Canal, which was previously U.S. colonial territory in Panama. And Trump is proud of the fact that he admires McKinley and wants to recreate McKinley's colonial policies in Latin America. And the day that Trump entered office for his second term as president, he signed an executive order titled Restoring Names That Honor American Greatness. And the first name that Trump mentioned in this executive order was the colonialist William McKinley. And he praised him not only for imposing tariffs, you know, Trump is imposing tariffs in countries all around the world, but also Trump praised McKinley because he oversaw a, quote, expansion of territorial gains for the nation, end quote. And this is something that Trump has repeatedly promised. He told his supporters that he's going to physically expand the territory of the U.S. empire, and in particular, he wants to colonize parts of Latin America.
The United States has the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we may be a very substantially enlarged country in the not-too-distant. Isn't it nice to see, you know, for years, for decades, we're the same size to the square foot. Probably got smaller, actually. But we might be an enlarged country pretty soon. And one of the things we're going to be doing is drill, baby, drill. And above all, China is operating the Panama Canal, and we didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. The United States will once again consider itself a growing nation, one that increases our wealth, expands our territory, builds our cities, raises our expectations, and carries our flag into new and beautiful horizons. And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars.
So Trump is proud of the fact that he's a colonialist. Now, all U.S. presidents are war criminals and imperialists. This is not new. This is true for both Republicans and Democrats. But as I often repeat, the difference with Trump is he doesn't hide it. He doesn't use this propaganda rhetoric about democracy and human rights. He says the quiet part loud. Trump has taken the mask off of the U.S. empire and shown its true ugly face, which is one based on war, exploitation, and imperialism. This is why he renamed the so-called Department of Defense the Department of War. He's proud of the fact that he's a warmongering imperialist. So again, to conclude, if you want to understand what Trump is actually doing in Latin America, it has nothing to do with drugs. The U.S. has historically been closely allied with the worst drug dealers in Latin America. In reality, this is about imposing the hegemony of the U.S. empire in Latin America turning all of the Western Hemisphere into an imperial so-called sphere of influence, bringing back the colonial Monroe Doctrine, overthrowing independent left-wing leaders in the region, and putting obedient right-wing oligarchic puppets in power who will allow U.S. corporations to exploit the natural resources and labor of the region. On that note, I'm going to conclude. I am Ben Norton. This is Geopolitical Economy Report.
Did a good job.
I want to thank everyone for joining me today.
All right, let's see what the algorithm shows us after watching that video. See, I talked about Abraham Lincoln. Now I get something that the family did that addicted the empire. That looks like someone else, but it's not Abraham Lincoln. Forced labor camps. What? All right, now we gotta upload that video. We're gonna do another. See, the world is talking about God, Christian Zionists, civil war, WTF, historic levels of corruption. Oh, that's a good one. Let's let it play 8 minutes while we upload our video. All right.
Trump just pardoned CZ, the founder of Binance. Bro, I am so cooked. My career is over. Worst time to be involved in fraud catching in the world, bro. There is just a pay to pardon going on here. Look, I got the whole timeline in front of me. I'm going to go through it. Let me just tell you my mindset. It's rough out here for a CoffeeZilla. Whether or not you're a stan of the Trump family, it doesn't matter. I mean, this is just straight up corruption, which we should be all against, right? Should not be a political issue. Unfortunately, increasingly, politicians are involved in these huge crypto self-dealing deals, but I am not injecting politics into this, okay? It just so happens that they happen to be in positions of power, but don't worry about that, right? Just look at the facts, please, for a moment. It all starts November 21st, 2023, okay? Binance and Changpeng Zhao both plead guilty in a historic $4 billion plea deal, where basically they admitted they didn't really have anti-money laundering controls, and they kind of willfully looked the other way, specifically in regards to people they probably should have not allowed them to use their platform, such as, according to the charges, terrorists, cyber criminals, and child abusers, which, you probably should block those people from using your platform. Now, on April 30th, 2024, Zhao is officially sentenced to 4 months of prison. And of course, a few months later, Donald Trump takes office, wins the presidency, okay? And while he's winning the presidency, he also announces the launch of something called World Liberty Financial, which is kind of their big crypto project entry. And this will become important in a moment. But before we get to that, let's just talk about something that happens on March 12th, 2025. This is about a year after he gets sentenced to prison. All of a sudden you have a big investor come in and put tons of money into Binance. It's a company called MGX, and they invest a $2 billion stake into Binance. And specifically, they say they're gonna do it in crypto. What kind of crypto is not announced. Now, the next day, it's reported by the Wall Street Journal that Binance has been reaching out to allies of Trump since the year before in talks to strike a business deal with the family as part of a return of the exiled company to the U.S. It says the possibilities include the Trumps taking a stake in Binance or the deal going through World Liberty Financial. So already you're hearing little rumblings that, okay, maybe they're trying to do a special deal with Binance, and pretty soon we're gonna hear talks of the pardon come up. But while that's happening, March 25th, 2025, World Liberty Financial announces a stablecoin. Now, if you don't know, stablecoins are like this incredible business because you just farm a bunch of yield from treasury bills while people use your stablecoins. The major players are USDT and USDC. It's important to note it's incredibly hard to launch a stablecoin. People don't like using new stablecoins. And so when they launched, a lot of people thought, well, how are they gonna get off the ground from nothing? I mean, yes, it's the president's stablecoin, but what are they gonna do to really make a splash? Well, we got the answer on May 1st, 2025, because it turns out that Abu Dhabi investment into Binance, that $2 billion deal, it was all done through USD1.
Now I gotta download that same video and make it just a little
You could have done it in BNB. That would actually make a lot more sense. put it in Binance's own crypto coin. No, the only reason you would do it in USD1 is to really help out one person or one player, which is World Liberty Financial, which is Trump's crypto project. Because, of course, as we said, these stablecoins are backed by treasuries. And unless you redeem the $2 billion, if you just hold it in USD1, what you're doing is de facto making the World Liberty Financial Group about $60 to $80 million a year, because they're just farming the yield from those treasuries at 3 to 4%, right? So it's $60 to $80 million in risk-free revenue for World Liberty Financial, just due to the fact that this $2 billion deal was put in USD1. Very curious, right? Why would they do that except to maybe curry favor? Well, a few days later, Binance, CZ, announces that he applied for a Trump pardon, right? Oh, interesting timing, right? Right as they're announcing that it was all done in USD1. The next month, World Liberty Financial announces they're partnering with PancakeSwap, and they're doing a $1 million reward trading campaign to increase USD1 usage. Now, of course, this is all, once again, associated with Binance. Now, on September 15th, 2025, we all of a sudden hear that there may have been some favors being done, or at least the appearance of favors being done in that big deal, where the $2 billion investment, as I said, part of it was MGX. Now, what was discovered by the New York Times is that right at the time that they were making this big investment into Binance, of course, which benefits World Liberty Financial immensely, they all of a sudden get access to a bunch of special AI chips. This is according to the New York Times. One of the Sheik's investment firms would deposit $2 billion into World Liberty Financial, a startup founded by the Witkoffs and Trumps. 2 weeks later, the White House agreed to allow the UAE access to hundreds of thousands of the world's most advanced and scarce computer chips, a crucial tool for the high-stakes race to dominate artificial intelligence. Many of the chips would go to G42, controlled by the same Sheik. Interesting. So one side of that deal got a benefit, right? MGX. Now, of course, there are a bunch of disclaimers in this piece that, everybody's saying that there was no conflict of interest. This just sort of happened to work out. The official quote is that the deal was totally unrelated to any government business. But now we know one side of the deal, MGX, got something. And now the question is, what does Binance get out of holding this USD1, right? Why don't they just redeem it for cash? Why don't they just put the money into stablecoins themselves, farm the yield themselves, that $60 to $80 million we were talking about, use it for something? Well, on October 11th, remember we had that hyper-liquid whale that we were saying, maybe insider trading with the whole timing of the Trump tweet. Well, interestingly, they are linked to a Polymarket account called Big Winner 01. And a couple weeks ago, they started betting on will Trump pardon Changpeng Zhao in 2025, which was a really kind of like wild bet at the time, like by the end of 2025, because there were only a couple months left, right? But then, all of a sudden, of course, October 23rd, 2025, we get the last leg of this deal. Trump, of course, pardons convicted Binance founder. And it's important to note, once again, just like the MGX deal, the White House is, of course, denying that it had anything to do with some of these crypto deals. Instead, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt says that Trump exercised his constitutional authority in issuing a pardon, who was prosecuted by the Biden administration and their war on cryptocurrency. The Biden administration's war on crypto is over. But again, what we saw is that the actual charges had nothing to do with politics. Instead, all of the charges were related to anti-money laundering and allowing money to go to basically criminals. They had chats from the chief compliance officer of Binance noting that they should probably not allow money to Iran, North Korea, Syria, Cuba, and Crimea. So, they kind of had him dead to rights. That is why it was such a big deal. And now, basically, that's being kind of wiped away here. The Wall Street Journal first reported on the pardon, says it will likely pave the way for Binance, the world's largest crypto exchange, to return to the U.S. after the company pled guilty. And really, my problem here is, okay, if you want to say, look, we're trying to do less of the crypto, enforcement stuff, we're just trying to loosen controls, that's one thing. But to make the president's family such an obvious beneficiary is so crazy to me. I mean, it's like, even if you're a supporter of Trump, and that's fine, you got to call balls and strikes here. This is insane. It's an insane, corrupt move where it clearly benefits the president, and it clearly is just to make them even more money. It's just gross. I don't know what to say. I didn't even want to cover it because once again, it's like politicians are involved, and I hate talking about that stuff, but it is one of the biggest pardons ever of one of the biggest cases against one of the most important crypto people. And yeah, it just seems so blatantly corrupt. It's not just that you're pardoning CZ, it's that leading up to it, you're having deals to make money off of that pardon. I mean, you literally can just look at the market cap of USD1 and see the effect this deal has had on this coin. Before they put the investment into this, there was no interest almost in USD1. And all of a sudden, this giant spike is when there was this inorganic investment into USD1, right, by the Binance deal. Almost all of the success of this coin, to the extent it has been successful, was because of this deal. It's just like a pay-to-play, obvious thing that's right in front of everyone's face. So, yeah, that's basically it. I don't know what else to say. It's ridiculous.
With the aim assist. Yeah, the aim assist is so good. It's broken. All right. 2 minutes, a video of 1 minute and 55 seconds. Capitalism collapse is coming for sure. To death to America. They don't even know. You guys want to watch it?
Was the American dream always just a nightmare in disguise? For decades, it meant a steady job, a 2-bedroom house with a white picket fence, and the classic 2.5 kids. Maybe even a college fund tucked away. But does that dream still exist? Today, wages are flat and debt is crushing. The very bedrock of the economy is cracking beneath our feet. So what happens next? On today's episode of the Infographic Show.
Whoa, happened? Everything crashed. Yeah, the application crashed. That's a first. Will it load? Yeah, it's still loading. It's just the tab that crashed. Interesting.
Was the American dream always just a nightmare in disguise? For decades, it meant a steady job, a 2-bedroom house with a white picket fence, and the classic 2.5 kids. Maybe even a college fund tucked away. But does that dream still exist? Today, wages are flat and debt is crushing. The very bedrock of the economy is cracking beneath our feet. So what happens next? On today's episode of the Infographic Show, we're exposing the death of American capitalism. Capitalism is one of those popular buzzwords that you have probably heard 1,000 times. It's a concept that's both simple and complicated. Depending on who you ask, the earliest versions of capitalism appeared centuries before America even existed. The core of capitalism is an idea that it's a means of production. It's a pretty big umbrella term for things like the infrastructure, equipment, resources, and labor involved in making products or services. And it can be privately owned by someone who isn't actively taking part in all of that stuff, and the resources made from—
I should have put some music, but oh well. What? How, bro?
I feel like there are illegal Mexican immigrants involved in this.
Right here.
We've got a Mexican!
Wow. The aim assist. Did I really smoke those dudes, bro? It was just the perfect time. It was just the perfect place. No other logic behind that. It's cool. Their computer must have broke. Their hacks. That's why. They were running Windows 10. That's why. Wow. Can't believe I got that, bro. The SBMM helps. PS5. It's the aim assist, guys. It's the aim assist. It's not me. Yeah, PS5 is so much fun. It doesn't look bad, right? No, it doesn't look bad. Of course not. It looks good. Doesn't look. It looks just as sharp as the camera. Not bad.
What? How, bro?
I feel like there are illegal Mexican immigrants involved in this.
Right here. Okay, it's good, it's good. All right, back to
From selling those goods and services can be invested back into the process to make it bigger and, in theory, better. The name for those resources is capital, hence capitalism. Let's just say you're a cobbler, someone who makes shoes for a living. If you want to sell some nice leather boots, you would either buy the leather or tan it yourself. Then you design the shoe, cut the leather into the right shapes in your workshop, fuse it all together, and now you got yourself a pair of boots to sell. You can set the price of those boots based on the cost of the materials and the time it took you to make them, and a little extra for the skill you've built over the years. If you're lucky, you might just make enough off of those shoes to support yourself and maybe your family. But capitalists think a lot bigger than that. One highly skilled artisan might be able to craft a beautiful boot, but that takes time. What if you want to scale the process? Maybe the capitalist has family money, profits from another industry, or loans from the wealthy. With that cash, he snaps up a factory and begins hiring workers. Rather than one skilled person who makes a whole shoe, you hire one person to design the shoe, another person to cut the leather, another to sew it all together. None of them need the skills going in, but each job is simple enough that it's easy to train. With a production line of specialized workers, they can make and sell those boots a lot faster, which means the general public gets a lot more choice.
Now they
In
just
theory,
make
it can be
everything
a
so
more
cheap.
stable living for the workers too. They don't need to worry about marketing the products to their customers or getting the raw materials from their suppliers. The only thing they need to do is their little bit again and again. But each person involved in the process makes less than the cobbler. It's not just the extra overhead of a bigger system. The capitalist who set it up also wants his cut for putting in the money. And if they're particularly greedy, they can do one or more of three things: pay workers terrible wages, cut corners on production, or hit the consumer with a price tag way higher than the boots deserve. But in theory, capitalism has a mechanism built in for stopping this from happening: competition. In an ideal capitalist world, there isn't just one sole person running an industrialized cobbling business. There might be a huge number of businesses doing this, and they are competing both for market share and the best talent for their labor. If the shoes are overpriced or the quality is poor, the customer can go elsewhere that sells better quality shoes for less. And if the work conditions are poor and the pay is terrible, employees can leave and join rival competitors. And that's when production lines fall apart. This is the free market, one of the core concepts of capitalism in action. The daddy of capitalism, Scottish economist Adam Smith, described capitalism as a system that turns selfishness into something useful. Since employers want to keep both customers and workers, it's in their interest to keep prices and wages fair and competitive. And nowhere on earth has capitalism flourished more than in the United States. In 1905, economist Max Weber published The Protestant Ethic and the Spirit of Capitalism. He argued that America's Protestant roots were a big reason the system took hold so strongly. A nation that hated monarchy from the very beginning became the perfect breeding ground for capitalism. And as the centuries went on and European countries kept kneecapping each other in petty wars, the U.S. saw its industrial sector grow and grow. By the end of World War I, it was a true capitalist powerhouse on the world stage. This saw the birth of the iconic American industrial heavy hitters like AT&T, Levi's, Coca-Cola, and, of course, Ford. The first company to make affordable mass-produced cars. Ford's unprecedented growth came from the same production line method we described earlier with our hypothetical shoe business. But it's not just the manufacturers that flourished in the U.S. after the Great Depression. More on that later. It was the other key part of capitalism too, the consumers. After World War II, women had entered the workforce, creating a larger labor pool and more people with disposable income. The booming post-war economy gave rise to a strong middle class, and with it, plenty of cash to spend. Meanwhile, much of the world was still recovering from mass bombings, invasions, occupations, and genocides. Selling goods to the American people became the most lucrative deal in the world. So plenty of American manufacturers could get rich selling their products domestically and avoiding tariffs. For a brief moment, it seemed like the whole capitalism thing might be the U.S.'s golden ticket to global supremacy and the greatest quality of life for its people. And then it all started tumbling down. The slow, agonizing death of American capitalism began with increased globalization of trade not long after World War II. The thing about markets under capitalism is, for them to stay healthy, they always need to grow their profits. This can happen in three ways, like we were mentioning earlier: less expensive manufacturing, higher market share, or more expensive products. But any one of those methods can be risky in a free market of choice for both consumers and workers. So what if you just pushed manufacturing somewhere else? Thanks to the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, and much later the World Trade Organization, the waters were smooth for international trade. American companies started realizing that they could save a lot of money by putting their manufacturing plants in developing countries with weaker economies. They would ship the goods back to the US to sell them to American consumers at considerable markup, meaning a nice fat profit. And because some of these companies rely on sweatshop labor, their workers don't have the freedom to walk away when pay or conditions are terrible. Massive trade deficits with countries where US companies moved their factories have dragged down wage growth for Americans without a college degree. From 1979 to the mid-2010s, this group saw their wages shrink by about 5 or 6%. That's bad enough, but it's even worse when you compare it to the almost 226% rise in prices during the same period. But you wouldn't see that on the news, where many of the companies outsourcing jobs overseas are buying lucrative ad spots. And if it seems like this has gotten even worse in the last few years, you are not just imagining things. The globalization of trade over domestic manufacturing made it extremely vulnerable to globe-shaking events like the COVID-19 pandemic. This caused a lot of these trade flows to collapse for months on end, an event we are still seeing the ramifications of today in unchecked inflation. However, as much as every politician hopes to ride into office on promises of bringing back manufacturing jobs like a magic carpet, there is no putting that genie back in the bottle without entirely restructuring the U.S. economy. Unless the 1% is willing to take massive cuts to their wealth or pass the expense on to consumers and risk losing them, manufacturing will likely stay abroad. Neither option looks appealing, and without government pressure, which isn't coming, nothing is going to change. The U.S. is now a post-industrial capitalist society, and what does that mean for you? Well, just take a look at your wage packet. We've seen pay for all but the richest take a sharp drop in the middle of a cost of living crisis. A study conducted on job website ZipRecruiter in 2023 found 48% of the 2,000 companies surveyed had dropped pay rates for some of their roles, especially the ones that were already the lowest paying. As prices rise, companies scale back to save money, creating an oversupply of labor that allows employers to lowball potential recruits. The competition for job offers is so low that there is no incentive to offer anything better. And we are all feeling this in our wallets on a day-to-day basis. A CBS poll found that 2 out of 3 Americans are stressed about their finances. And we are insanely jealous of that third American. And this still isn't as bad as the 3 out of 4 Americans who claim that their income hasn't managed to keep up with rampant inflation. Many Americans are having to work multiple jobs just to make ends meet, with zero hope of ever rising out of their economic bracket. For the average American, there's also the anchor of consumer debt hanging around their neck. That's an average of almost $90,000 from a soul-crushing combination of credit card debt, auto loans, mortgage and personal loans, home equity lines of credit, and student loans. In theory, education should be the great equalizer, giving Americans equal opportunities to control their life and improve their chances in the job market. But how could that be possible when teaching itself is becoming a more hostile profession to get involved with? When adjusting for inflation, teachers in many states are making 5% less than they did 10 years ago, despite attempts at pay increases. For people in the rapidly dissolving middle class, some of the traditional markets of capitalist success now feel hopelessly out of reach. And what's a better example of this than home ownership? In 2024, only 24% of housing sales were by first-time homebuyers. It's down an eye-watering 50% from 2010. These days, the average age of a first-time homebuyer is 38, 10 years above the historical norm for home buying. Back in March 2025, only 1 in 5 homes was seen as affordable for someone with a $75,000 annual salary. If you are making a little less than that at $50,000, you can only afford 8.7% of home listings. That's down 9.4% from 2024. And while being forced into the position of the eternal renter is pretty bad, an even worse possibility is becoming increasingly likely. Since 2024, homelessness in the United States has risen a completely depressing 18%. That's around 771,000 people, almost 1 million Americans sleeping in their cars or on the streets. 150,000 of them are children. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, who conducted the reports on these matters, have said these are the worst numbers they have ever seen. If these trends hold up, that means one of the most basic tenets of the American dream, the house with the white picket fence, is going to be completely unattainable for the majority of Americans. The only way they'll ever be able to experience it is actually in their dreams. But what about the 2.5 kids? Well, it turns out in this modern form of American capitalism, your prospects for that ain't looking so good either. There are around 10 million kids in the childcare system around the U.S., with an average cost of nearly $1,000 a month per child. And that is on the cheaper end. In California, you're looking closer to $2,000 per month. And that's not even factoring in costs of food, clothes, and leisure, which are only going to increase as they grow. And what about the promise that you'll be able to retire in your twilight years to rest, relax, and pursue your passions while living off your savings and pension? We're sorry to tell you that that window is closing too. 11 million Americans, 1 in 5 people over 65, are still working, with no escape but the grave in sight. 50% of women and 47% of men between the ages of 55 and 66 have no retirement savings. Meanwhile, 90 private jets flew to the second wedding of Jeff Bezos. The divide between the haves and the have-nots seems to be getting wider and wider. According to 2025 census data, we have seen the income of the average household stagnate since the pandemic, while the richest households in the country have actually seen a little boost. Normal people were suffering during the worst years of the pandemic lockdown, and the billionaire class was actually getting richer. The combined wealth of all U.S. billionaires increased by just over $2 trillion between March 18, 2020 and October 15, 2021, going from approximately $2.9 trillion to around $5 trillion. The U.S. has over 700 billionaires, the most of any country in the world. But let's look at the 5 richest people in that period. Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Larry Page, Elon Musk, and of course the happily married Jeff Bezos. In that lockdown period, their combined wealth grew 123%. In the first financial quarter of 2025, the bottom 50% of earners in the U.S. owned only a combined 2.5% of all the wealth in the U.S. The richest 1% now own half of all U.S. stocks and mutual funds, up from 40% in 2002, according to the Federal Reserve. So when the news celebrates a booming stock market, we know who is really cashing in, and it's not us. It's important to remember that we have been here before. The Roaring 20s weren't exactly roaring for everyone. While the Gatsbys of the world were living it up, average people were having a harder time keeping it together. In 1923, the Supreme Court ruled that the minimum wage laws were unconstitutional, so if employers wanted to pay chicken feed to their workers, they could. In 1926, President Coolidge cut taxes for the rich to stimulate the economy, and this ended up having the absolute opposite effect. By 1929, deregulation had concentrated wealth to a staggering degree. Just 0.1% of the population held 34% of the nation's wealth, the same as the bottom 42% combined. Half of all corporate wealth in a country of more than 100 million people was controlled by only 200 companies. Despite corporate profits rising by around 62% over the course of the decade, that success did not trickle down. In October of 1929, the U.S. economy exploded, and even that is putting it mildly. One of the main reasons why the stock market crashed and the U.S. banking system went belly up is a pretty obvious result of short-sightedness and greed. Companies paid their workers terrible money to create a huge amount of industrial output and products. But because everyone was making terrible money, they had no purchasing power. So there was nobody to buy the products that those companies overproduced. Everyone was sitting on a surplus of overpriced goods, from agriculture to consumer products. And that set the stage for the Great Depression. What saved America back then was the New Deal, put in place by Franklin D. Roosevelt, under the economic philosophies of Maynard Keynes. Keynes, to put it simply, believed in the importance of circulation. A good, healthy economy is one where the money is always flowing. Bosses pay their workers well, who then can buy products with their disposable income, sending money back to the bosses. They use it to make more products and pay their workers. Meanwhile, the government makes a pretty penny on taxes from all those money movements. If there are strong labor protections in place, this system can work out for everybody. But that means less of the collective wealth is consolidated in the hands of the ultra-wealthy, our American super-capitalists. Faced with labor laws that make them pay fair wages, companies found a workaround. Well, 2 of them, corporate lobbying and the gig economy. Uber, Airbnb, DoorDash, Fiverr, Upwork, CrowdSpring, Etsy, and LegalZoom all have one thing in common. They are not jobs, they are gigs. They sit in a legal gray area that lacks the protections or regulation of traditional
I got someone
employment,
right
and
here.
they are becoming an increasingly popular way to
No,
monetize
that guy
every
got
aspect
me.
of life while saving money for the companies. Fewer people in a legal sense are employees than ever. From taxi drivers to writers of online edutainment videos, all of these people are contractors, and that is an entirely different dynamic to traditional employment on paper. An estimated 64 million Americans, representing 38% of the U.S. workforce, did freelance work in 2023. That is 4 million more than 2022, and it's only gotten worse
Freelancer
since.
here.
And how do corporations keep all those loopholes that save money for them and destroy security for workers? Two magical little words: corporate lobbying. This is when corporations and other groups pay to influence the actions
I
of
just
the
have to do
jokers in
whatever
Congress.
work, whatever
2024
comes
saw
my
an
way, it doesn't
all-time
matter.
high of lobbying costs, specifically $4.4 billion. It's
That's what
legally
happens when
protected
you
by
don't
the
have a
First
Social
Amendment and the
Security number.
Lobbying Disclosure Act. It makes sure that when money is protected speech, those with the most money will always have the loudest voices. They keep
trying
tax
to work,
loopholes
see if,
wide open. They make sure their failures
YouTube
get
pays me
bailed out with
for
taxpayer money. And when all else
entertaining you
fails, a
guys.
struggling company can legally buy back its own shares.
This is where I
artificially
thought
boosting
the
value
aim
through
assist was
false
not
scarcity.
working at all.
But competition is supposed to keep them honest. So naturally, they're trying to destroy it. And the worst part? They're on their way. Companies empower themselves to act horribly when they move to aggressively crush their competition, whether it's through predatory pricing or the much more common
Get a
monopoly
headshot.
building methods of mergers and acquisitions. Larger companies buy up or merge with smaller ones, so they soon become the only choice on the market. And with enough lobbying money, you can keep the Federal
Nothing.
Trade Commission off your back for a very long time. Don't believe us? Here are some companies you may know who have had antitrust complaints against them: Google, Amazon, Apple, Visa, and Live Nation Ticketmaster. It goes without saying that this is terrible for consumers and workers, but it's not getting better. Right now, the technologies that these companies are investing most heavily in, like artificial intelligence, are primed to make life worse of all for us. But what happens then? Will things hit a breaking point where we all collectively say, enough is enough, break down the system
I
as it
wanna
is,
see how
and
it
work on building
reacts.
something better? Or are we just in the middle part of a
I
domino
had no
chain
aim
leading to
assist.
something a lot worse? For the middle and working class, things are looking pretty apocalyptic. Without reform or revolution, all the scary numbers that you've heard are only going to get worse. Wages, jobs, housing, debt, and homelessness. Monopolies are consolidating wealth and power like never before. They're engaging in crony capitalism that turns the government into their lapdog, and that leads to a world of techno-feudalism, where personal freedoms collapse right alongside personal wealth. One way or another, one thing is certain. With
got 'em
the
all
direction
down.
that American capitalism is going, we're all going
All
to
the
feel the hurt.
bots.
You might be
First.
witnessing the death of capitalism right now, but it's not the first time the country
Oh,
has
we
been
got
pushed to the
someone.
brink. Watch tariff that destroyed the American economy in just weeks to see how it all collapsed before. Or click on this video instead.
There's nothing really.
There it is. Good game, boys.
GG's, guys. GG's, guys. Give respect, respect. Somebody was complaining. If I don't get the win, I don't really record it if there's any good clips. Okay, OpenAI declares GPU or what?
OpenAI's meteoric rise in generative AI has been built on NVIDIA's silicon. The company's flagship models, from GPT-3 to ChatGPT-5, were
Really?
trained and run on thousands of NVIDIA GPUs. By 2025, OpenAI's services had amassed over 800 million weekly users, and meeting that demand meant buying virtually every high-end NVIDIA chip it could get. In the world of AI hardware, NVIDIA has long been the uncontested king. But what happens when one AI lab grows so big that bending the knee to this king starts to hurt? NVIDIA dominates modern AI computing. By some estimates, it holds over 90%
That's
of the
a
market
bot.
for
I just wanna
discrete
see the
GPUs, graphics processors,
aim assist.
including those used for AI in data centers.
Nope,
Its
still do not
success
have
isn't
aim
just
assist.
about powerful chips, it's about software. NVIDIA's CUDA platform has become the default language of AI. Universities teach CUDA, researchers build on it.
CUDA.
Nearly every major AI framework is optimized for it. This CUDA dominance has created a moat that for years kept challengers at bay. If you wanted top performance for training cutting-edge models, you needed NVIDIA GPUs. OpenAI learned this early, collaborating with NVIDIA from its inception. In fact, NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang personally delivered OpenAI's very first DGX supercomputer back in 2016, a symbolic handoff of the keys to the AI kingdom. This one-sided reliance has economic and political implications. A single NVIDIA H100 GPU, the workhorse of AI training in 2023 to 2025, costs upwards of $40,000 on the market. And that's if you can get one. Demand far outstrips supply, with NVIDIA essentially selling every AI chip it can make. Hyperscalers and AI labs were projected to spend over $300 billion on AI hardware in 2025 alone. For OpenAI, which uses tens of thousands of GPUs, the hardware bill soars into the billions. The power dynamic is stark. NVIDIA's 2025 revenue is expected to exceed $200 billion, roughly 6 times AMD's sales. NVIDIA's profit margins are enviable too. By controlling the entire stack, chips, software, networking, NVIDIA captures the lion's share of value from the AI boom.
Well, that's a very nice
OpenAI, like every AI company, has effectively been paying tribute to the king in the form of high margins and upfront capital for GPUs. This dynamic has even caught policymakers' attention. In early 2025, the White House spotlighted the need for massive AI infrastructure investments, up to $500 billion, in part to ensure no single chokehold stifles AI progress. Relying on one vendor, however advanced, concentrates enormous power in one place. Technically, NVIDIA's leadership also shaped what AI models could do. The CUDA software ecosystem meant that the latest optimizations, libraries, and tools all favored NVIDIA GPUs first. Engineers fluent in CUDA number in the tens of thousands worldwide, whereas those experienced in alternatives are only a few thousand.
That was the real dude.
It's a self-reinforcing cycle. More developers use CUDA, so more libraries support it, which attracts even more developers. For OpenAI, this meant hiring talent and designing systems around NVIDIA's platform, effectively standardizing on the king's terms. The result? Incredible AI breakthroughs, but at the cost of deepening dependency. Was OpenAI comfortable being tethered to one supplier? The strain began to show as OpenAI scaled. Running ChatGPT and training new models demanded ever more compute. Sam Altman, OpenAI's CEO, openly mused about needing 250 gigawatts of AI compute by 2033, an almost unthinkable scale. The entire world's data centers, by comparison, are only a fraction of that. It was clear that no single chip maker, not even NVIDIA, could easily satisfy that hunger alone. Moreover, relying solely on NVIDIA left OpenAI exposed to supply shocks and price hikes. What if NVIDIA couldn't deliver enough chips on time? What if geopolitical issues or export restrictions constrained NVIDIA's supply chain? These questions loomed as existential risks. OpenAI's partnership with Microsoft had partially shielded it. Microsoft's Azure bought NVIDIA GPUs by the truckload on OpenAI's behalf. But even Microsoft faced the same supply bottlenecks. By mid-2025, GPU shortages were a common headache for anyone building large AI clusters. Some cloud providers and startups reported wait times and inflated prices. Officially, an H100 lists around $30,000, but unofficially some buyers were quoted double that in the grey market. The one-sided reliance was as much NVIDIA's problem as OpenAI's. NVIDIA couldn't magically expand fab capacity overnight, and every extra chip for OpenAI was one less for another customer. Tensions were political too. US regulators, keen to maintain leadership, encouraged diversity in the AI supply chain, fearing that a single point of failure or control could hinder progress or raise national security concerns. So in 2023 to 2025, OpenAI found itself in a paradox. NVIDIA was both its greatest enabler and a potential shackle. The AI crown that NVIDIA wore had to be respected, bending the knee by continuing to buy tens of thousands of its GPUs. Yet OpenAI also started plotting a way to loosen that golden shackle. The company explored designing its own AI chips with Broadcom, a project still in early stages, aiming for late 2026.
I gotta take it down.
It quietly began writing more software in a hardware-agnostic way, testing AMD cards for compatibility on smaller workloads. Still, no serious alternative existed at scale until late 2025. That's when OpenAI made a dramatic move, one that would effectively ignite an AI civil war in the GPU world. Enter NVIDIA's Rubin platform. In September 2025, OpenAI and NVIDIA announced a massive deal. At least 10 gigawatts of new NVIDIA GPU systems for OpenAI, with NVIDIA even committing $100 billion to help fund OpenAI's build-out. The first phase, slated for 2026, would use NVIDIA's next-generation Vera Rubin architecture. Named after the pioneering astronomer Vera Rubin, this platform promised unprecedented training and inference capability, essentially AI supercomputers on a new scale. On the surface, this looked like OpenAI doubling down on its loyalty to the king. 10 gigawatts is an enormous capacity, millions of GPUs, cementing NVIDIA as the core of OpenAI's future. Jensen Huang proclaimed it the biggest AI infrastructure project in history. Sam Altman lauded that no partner but NVIDIA could do this so fast. It was a public bow to the king's power. But behind the scenes, something had shifted. The terms of that partnership signaled a more balanced relationship. Rather than just buying chips, OpenAI secured a pledge that NVIDIA would invest in OpenAI, effectively returning some capital and intertwining their fates. OpenAI would work closely with NVIDIA to co-optimize hardware and software roadmaps, influencing NVIDIA's future designs for its needs. In other words, OpenAI was no longer just a customer, it was becoming a partner with influence. The stage was set for a new game. OpenAI was positioning itself not merely as a buyer of chips, but as a power broker that could play one supplier against another. The question was, would there ever be a credible other supplier to balance NVIDIA? Enter AMD.
Oh, I got it. That's a good one.
On October 6th, 2025, the tech industry was jolted by news that felt almost cinematic. OpenAI announced a multi-billion-dollar alliance with NVIDIA's chief rival, AMD. If NVIDIA was the empire, AMD now emerged as the rebel alliance, backed by OpenAI's newfound resolve to foster competition. The deal's headline numbers were eye-popping. OpenAI committed to purchasing 6 gigawatts of AMD's Instinct GPUs over the next several years. To put that in perspective, 6 gigawatts of AI compute is an astounding amount, roughly equivalent to the electricity consumption of 5 million US homes, or about 3 Hoover Dams of power.
Where does the recording
in practical
start?
terms, it means hundreds of thousands of high-end GPUs. For AMD, a company that had only a small slice of the AI market until then, this was a transformative order. The partnership centers on AMD's Instinct MI series accelerators, specifically the upcoming MI450 GPU, part of the MI400 generation. The first 1 gigawatt deployment of MI450-based systems is scheduled for the second half of 2026. This timeline aligns closely with NVIDIA's Vera Rubin rollout, suggesting OpenAI will bring up AMD-powered capacity in parallel with NVIDIA's through on the purchases.
We'll switch it up. Guys, that was nice. Awesome, awesome.
That's it.
We'll switch it up.
Under 15 minutes. Okay, that makes... Okay. Export it. Lower. 60 FPS. I'm just gonna put it... Airstrike. Airstrike win. Let's go. I'll let that go. It's gonna take a while. That'll be okay. It says right there for the time. We'll start at 118. Let's see.
And hitting certain milestones. The first tranche vests when that initial 1 gigawatt 400 generation. The first 1 gigawatt deployment of MI450-based systems is scheduled for the second half of 2026. This timeline aligns closely with NVIDIA's Vera Rubin rollout, suggesting OpenAI will bring up AMD-powered capacity in parallel with NVIDIA's next-gen capacity. Over the multi-year deal, OpenAI and AMD will collaborate across at least 2 GPU generations, starting with the MI450 in 2026 and extending to MI500 and beyond. In fact, AMD noted that this collaboration began with the MY300X and continued with the MI350X series, implying OpenAI had already been giving feedback on AMD's designs even before the public deal. At AMD's June 2025 event, CEO Lisa Su acknowledged OpenAI as a key partner, providing input for MI300 and MI400 series chips. The Rebel Alliance wasn't spontaneous. It had been quietly brewing. What truly grabbed headlines was the creative structure of the deal. AMD isn't just selling chips, it's effectively betting on OpenAI's success. Under the agreement, AMD granted OpenAI a warrant to purchase up to 160 million AMD shares at $1 each. That represents roughly a 10% stake in AMD if fully vested, worth over $15 billion at AMD's pre-announcement stock price. But OpenAI can only earn these shares by following through on the purchases and hitting certain milestones. The first tranche vests when that initial 1 gigawatt of MI450 systems is delivered. Further tranches require OpenAI to scale to the full 6 gigawatts, and even hinge on AMD's stock price reaching targets up to $600 per share. In essence, AMD is saying, help us drive our stock to the moon by buying a ton of our chips, and we'll cut you in on the upside. This unprecedented alliance aligns incentives on both sides. OpenAI now has a direct interest in AMD's success. It could become a major AMD shareholder, and AMD in turn is tied to ensuring OpenAI's AI supercomputers thrive. One analyst called it transformative, not just for AMD, but for the dynamics of the industry. OpenAI's AMD alliance jolted investors. AMD's stock surged over 30% on the announcement, its biggest jump in nearly a decade. This one-day leap added around $80 billion to AMD's market value, reflecting a sudden belief that AMD could seriously challenge NVIDIA in AI. The chart above shows how AMD's share price spiked upon news of the deal, rightmost point, a stark contrast to its gradual climb earlier. Investors saw OpenAI's commitment as a major validation of AMD's AI chips, effectively crowning AMD as a viable second source. Why is OpenAI doing this? The strategic calculus comes down to diversification, leverage, and technology. OpenAI's president Greg Brockman explained that they have a diversity of workloads, and it will require a diversity of chips to meet their needs. Training cutting-edge models, the very large, complex neural networks, is one type of workload. It demands the absolute bleeding edge in performance and a highly tuned software stack. Inference, running those trained models millions of times per day to serve users, is a slightly different beast. Inference at scale still needs powerful hardware, but it places at least as much emphasis on throughput, efficiency, and cost per query. Critically, inference can be more flexible in the hardware it runs on. Once a model is trained, it can often be exported to run on various platforms with minimal accuracy loss, as long as the platform supports the necessary operations. NVIDIA's advantage is clearest in training, where their end-to-end software stack, CUDA, QDNN, TensorRT, etc., squeezes maximum performance out of GPUs. As one Microsoft Azure engineer observed, in training, that is where CUDA really shines, and most experts aren't yet comfortable switching due
When
to the
announced in
entrenched...
2015, Windows 10 was supposed to be the last major version of Windows, but it just ended up being the last Windows your computer would run. With Microsoft putting the nail in the coffin for tens of millions of computers by ceasing important security updates to Windows 10 and going above and beyond to ensure those users can't upgrade to Windows 11. You see, Microsoft received backlash when it released Windows 11 in 2021, part of that being for the TPM 2.0 and CPU requirements. Computers even just a few years old were deemed obsolete. Estimations show Windows 10 still has a very large install base. About 50% of Windows computers in the world still run Windows 10. 4 years after the release of 11. But it wasn't long till people circumvented the requirements and had Windows 11 running on just about anything. Even truly obsolete systems like those from 2008 with Core 2 Duos. However, Microsoft didn't admit their mistake, they doubled down. Both the minimum system requirements and the ability to set up Windows without logging into a Microsoft account. The TPM, or Trusted Platform Module, is a feature required for file encryption and Windows Hello. Both features are of course nice to have, but not something that should really be a system requirement. This laptop has a 5th gen Intel Core i7 and TPM version 1.2, so it's blocked from updating. An aggressive stance on the likes we've never seen before. Windows has always had minimum system requirements, but never have they been so aggressive towards ensuring there's no workaround. With the Windows 11 24H2 update, Microsoft was making their stance known. There was no more beating the system requirements on very old computers, as they added a CPU instruction update to obliterate compatibility.
15 minutes.
However, this may have been to add certain AI features and allow them to perform better.
72% done.
Users that had successfully bypassed the Windows 11 system requirements initially found that with each new feature release, their computers could not directly upgrade using Windows Update, requiring repatching the OS every time. Not sure if it would still be possible or how it would behave. So you can trick some computers into installing Windows 11, but Microsoft has made it so difficult it really isn't worth all the hassle. Microsoft's official system requirements for Windows 11 being an 8th generation Intel Core CPU or a 2nd generation Ryzen processor. That's essentially saying you need a computer from 2018 or later. Therefore, at launch, Windows 11 only supported computers around 3 years old, compared to Windows 10, which at launch supported around 8 to 10-year-old computers. This is similar to Apple's approach, which uses model years, with their latest macOS, macOS Tahoe, only running on their computers from 2019 or later, essentially putting an expiry date on these devices. And with the death of Windows 10 having just passed on the 14th of October, millions of perfectly working, perfectly capable computers became obsolete. The consumer versions of Windows 10 will no longer receive important security updates, leaving those ineligible to upgrade to Windows 11 dead in the water. But let's be honest, security updates or not, there's still going to be people who don't care and will keep using Windows 10 till software drops support. With a notable exception to enterprise customers on Windows 10 enterprise versions, some of which keep receiving updates till 2032, 7 additional years. This isn't unusual and is a practice seen on previous versions of Windows. Microsoft knows how to keep its large volume purchasers happy. You can force a new version onto consumers easily enough, but a large-scale business or university needs to replace all of their computers to install this new OS, it could cost millions of dollars. So they keep receiving updates for several more years. Windows 7 Enterprise officially received updates till 2020, XP till 2014, with a final security update released in 2019, almost 20 years after release. This alone is probably why Apple computers have never taken off in the business sector. Apple releases new macOS versions every year, fall behind, and you get no security updates. Apps quickly aren't supported, and legacy features often get removed in newer versions, making backwards compatibility a nightmare. Over the last 15 years, Microsoft has shifted from primarily computer software to having their own computer hardware. So now they don't just have the incentive to sell you new software, but a whole new device. Sure, the Windows 11 upgrade is free, but if everyone gets it, then they're not making any money. They already know if they charge for the upgrade, people either don't upgrade or pirate the software. Microsoft claims the TPM and minimum CPU requirements are there for increased device security. Even so, it's still hard to justify, especially when Windows Recall came onto the scene, a so-called feature that logged everything you did on your computer throughout the day, allowing you to view it on a timeline, websites, apps, and other sensitive information with a click of a button. Except it wasn't encrypted. Anyone with access to the computer could see what you'd been up to. The feature was pulled from Windows till some of the concerns were addressed. The feature is now opt-in, encrypted on device, and requires Windows Hello to access. To make an already unpopular operating system even more controversial, Microsoft started adding ads to the Windows 11 Start menu. So whether you got the free upgrade from Windows 10 or purchased a new $140 Home or $200 Pro edition of Windows, you now get built-in ads. That being said, they can be disabled. Having received a lot of backlash, they announced an extension program starting at $30, and you'll continue receiving security updates, presumably those also received by enterprise customers. Or if you log into your Microsoft account and enable OneDrive backup, you receive it for free. Again, with that Microsoft account, is that to get you to buy a OneDrive subscription or something else? So either way, a new computer or extended updates, Microsoft will still be making money out of discontinuing Windows 10. Technically speaking, you can migrate your Windows license to an enterprise version, which would require a total reinstall, but you'd get these updates. Although if you were to obtain a license, that would likely mean enrolling your device into someone else's organization. So it's not a recommended path for the average user. If you can't or don't want to run Windows 11, Linux is the only other logical option. It's built around Unix, which is similar to macOS more so than Windows at a core level, but many of the Windows applications you use on a day-to-day basis may not be compatible. Resellers and those trying to keep perfectly capable hardware out of landfill have already jumped on board ditching Windows in favor of Linux. Microsoft isn't going anywhere in the enterprise and business world, but it seems some consumers are fed up with Windows 11, whether for its hardware requirements, privacy concerns, or unwanted features. Will that cause a portion of their user base to switch to Linux? Some, sure, but most will probably throw away their computer and replace it with a new one, or just continue using Windows 10 until apps are no longer supported, taking the security risk. Microsoft isn't the first and certainly won't be the last to force obsolescence onto perfectly working devices. To me, it seems that Microsoft is wanting greater control of your computer and is primarily switching to subscription-based services and apps. Let me know what you think. Are the system requirements for Windows 11 justified? Are you upgrading or have you already upgraded? And what was your favorite version of Windows? Mine? Windows 98 and 7. And on that note, this has been a Hugh Jeffries video. If you like what you saw, consider subscribing and check out the playlist for tech that's not what it seems. And if you're looking for any used devices, be sure to check out my online store, link for which is down in the description. That's all for this video, and I'll catch you guys next time.
Marking the rest of that squad on your tac map. Get hunting.
Okay, video's done. Okay. Did I get? Okay, it was me. Okay, I did get that win. It was at 17, so it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh no, it was 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Oh, 539. Okay, 539. Gotta confirm. Yeah, that's the video.
With 666.
Win. We're almost there. We're almost there. Then we can play. I just have to do this because of the space. Gotta conserve space. Kill telemetry wedges blow. That was a month ago.
The world's GDP, I think, is something like $50 trillion, right? You add up all the productivity of all the countries in the world, you know, put together, I think it's about $50 trillion. And you just say 10% of that will get augmented by AI per year. That's a $5 trillion market. I mean, that's bananas, right? If you ever told me that a company, any company, would get a deal for 20 times their annual sales, right, of any product, I would be like, that is crazy. And then if you said, oh, but they only have 4 years to deliver it, I'd be like, that's nuts. So the real answer is, it's not NVIDIA versus AMD at all. You shouldn't think about like one is good and one is bad. So these are all very skilled workers that are not about to get replaced by AI, right?
Fine,
like we will always need plumbers, electricians, carpenters, general contractors, etc. If Jensen misses by 50%, he's got a $10 trillion company. Oh, the market's still so insanely large. So it's like when you play those games, just cut the number in half. Would you still bet on it? So
yeah, you're a linear machine in an exponential,
in an exponential world. Fantastic.
All right, so today I have Alex from ticker symbol U with me, and he is one of the biggest YouTubers in the AI hardware space and has been for a number of years through a combination of good fortune and wise decisions about things to focus on in his life. He was very well positioned in artificial intelligence, hardware technology here for basically the entire major run-up in excitement around AI hardware that we've seen since ChatGPT and the launch of that and the results that has driven for NVIDIA. And so he's actually made almost 900% returns since ChatGPT launched in December of 2022. And I wanted to get him on today so that we can dive into one of the, big hot button topics in AI hardware today, and that is NVIDIA versus AMD. And so I want to turn the first question over to you, Alex. What is the high level overview of NVIDIA versus AMD? Like, what's your 10,000 foot view on these two companies, the market they're going after, and how investors who are thinking about where they want to allocate their money between these two names, like what are the things that they need to be thinking about?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question. And I've gotten this answer wrong so many times, like on my journey to like figure this out myself. So let me give you the 10,000 foot view first, but then we should probably dive into some of the nuance, right? So the real answer is, it's not NVIDIA versus AMD at all. You shouldn't think about like one is good and one is bad. So if you're on camp NVIDIA, AMD is not the enemy. If you're in camp AMD, NVIDIA is not the enemy, because the market is growing so fast that there's more than enough room for both of them. They will both be supply limited, not demand limited. And as soon as you're supply limited, you do not care about the competition, right? Because you're not trying to race to the bottom on price, for example, to outsell. It's not like cars, for example, right? Where you want to offer the discount that gets people to buy your car because then they won't buy your competitor's car, right? GPUs do not work like that right now, especially data center GPUs. Every chip that AMD will make will get sold. Every chip NVIDIA will make will get sold. So there is, in essence, no competition between them.
So it sounds to me like you're saying there's not an AI bubble. And yeah, I'm just curious, like, why is there so much demand, and why is that demand outstripping the supply of GPUs right now?
Yeah, so I think it's for a wide variety of reasons. I think the biggest reason is AI is going to be considered a general purpose technology if it's not already considered so. So when I say general purpose technology, I mean things like the internet, the printing press, the PC, the motor, right? The tractor, things that like transcend one genre of product and are largely useful everywhere, right? So that's the first thing. The reason that works is because AI can be infused everywhere, right? Not just consumer products, but also different enterprise pieces of software, pretty much across the board, right? From genetics and biology to sort of, insert any software category here. You can add an AI agent to help you do that job more productively, faster, cheaper, etc. Right? So I think the demand is there, A, because it's across a lot of different categories, but B, because it turns out that we're going to use way more tokens per prompt than we originally were in 2022. So if you remember earlier this year, a company called DeepSeek from China released a model called R1 and then R2, and these were reasoning models. So now instead of just like asking a question and it generating an answer, the model will actually spend time, which means spending tokens, thinking about its response, double checking its answer, going deeper, breaking things down into step by step, maybe even calling other submodels and things like that. All of that costs tokens to do. So the number of tokens required to serve every prompt has gone up dramatically, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I think is, somewhat confusing in this space is that we call CPUs like general purpose computing.
Yep.
And we call GPUs accelerated computing.
Yes.
And, that kind of seems like it implies that accelerated computing is a more niche workload. It's a more niche use case that like you can only do it for specific things.
Yep.
And that certainly fits with the history of the field. But one of the things that Jensen actually recognized in the early 2010s was he said that, oh, wow, these deep neural networks that we can apply to crazy things like image recognition, it seems like those things are a universal function approximator. So like, what is a universal function approximator, and what's the relationship of that to actually the implication that accelerated computing is, like you said at the beginning, a general purpose technology that's actually maybe not even as large as the general technology of CPUs, but even larger?
Yeah, so let's like break this down into like a couple different questions, right? So a lot of problems cannot be parallelized, right? That's the major difference between accelerated computing and serial computing, which is the CPU, right? CPUs take instructions and process them one at a time serially, right? GPUs can take in instructions, can take in a problem, break it down into chunks, solve those chunks in parallel, recombine the answers, the partial products, and then output an answer, right? That only works for problems that can be chunked up and solved in parallel, right? So like matrix math problems are a great example because you can take each column of a matrix, solve like a vector multiplication problem column by column, then recombine the columns in the right order at the end, and now you've just saved a lot of time depending on how many columns were in that matrix, right? There's a whole class of problems that can't be parallelized like that, right? Maybe not math problems, but certain logic problems, I don't know, like things where the order of the steps certainly matter. So the reason we call CPUs general purpose computing is because they can compute anything. They can compute graphics, they can compute matrices, they can compute, you name it. The question is how fast, right? How much compute power, how long will it take, etc. Accelerated computing can only deal with problems that can be parallelized. Okay, so now let's talk about the second part of your question. If you have a universal function approximator, which is just a fancy way of saying a set of tools that can solve a wide variety of problems, like neural networks, AI in general, neural networks specifically, but there are other like forms of, AI algorithms besides neural networks that are interesting to get into, like image generators don't work by neural networks. Anyway, so, and those universal function approximators can be parallelized. Now you can have your cake and eat it too. You can do anything a CPU can do where before you couldn't, and you can accelerate it because, neural networks, for example, are like the perfect matrix math problem to run on a GPU. That was my research well before ChatGPT came out, was using small neural networks to help accelerate different radars and different telescopes. So just realize AI and neural networks are much older than ChatGPT in general. So Jensen, one of his brilliant aha moments, which has been shared across the scientific community, and he's been actually
really involved with like many other companies that use their accelerated computing, is understanding that GPUs are not just for graphics. They're for any problem that can be like parallelized like this, right? Which extends well beyond the initial function of just rendering graphics quickly, which is an important and big matrix multiplication problem. It turns out that AI can do a lot. AI uses a lot of that same like background math, can be perfectly accelerated, and can solve a wide variety of problems.
And so the reason that I asked that question is because I think the number of problems that can be solved and the size of the computers that are required to solve those problems is tied directly to like how big is the demand for AI overall? Is there an end in sight to this AI bubble, you know, speak that we're talking about now? From what you're seeing, like what types of problems that are big unsolved problems in corporate America, in technology, in healthcare, like are there big problems that really just, you know, AI doesn't help with at all that would lead us to believe that there is, you know, a near-term end in sight to all of this?
So that's an interesting question. I haven't really framed it like that myself. Like, hey, what is a subset of problems that AI just won't solve? But like, let me give you a couple examples, but tell you why that kind of doesn't matter for the purpose of the growth of AI, right? So plumbers, electricians, handymen, carpenters, right? There's this whole class of skilled trade. So these are all very skilled workers that are not about to get replaced by AI, right? Like we will always need plumbers, electricians, carpenters, general contractors, etc. Construction, everything in construction, which is a big part of like humanity's output. I would say commercial driving, we're not really there yet. You know, obviously companies like Tesla and Waymo are getting much closer on non-commercial driving, you know, like passenger transportation. But I think we're a long way from seeing like autonomous fleets of 18-wheelers on the road. You know what I mean? And then, so there, I'm trying to say there's a whole class of jobs that are high value, high skill, not about to be replaced by AI, right? Those are some examples. But the market for jobs where AI will augment that job, not replace it, not do the job entirely, but augment somebody doing that job, is infinitely bigger. So the world's GDP, I think, is something like $50 trillion, right? You add up all the productivity of all the countries in the world, you know, put together, I think it's about $50 trillion. And you just say 10% of that will get augmented by AI per year. That's a $5 trillion market. I mean, that's bananas, right? Like if you're going after a $5 trillion market, you don't care about the problems you can't solve, because the problems you can solve, that's like, you're chasing that market forever, right? That's more than a human lifetime to build a company that will capture any meaningful percentage of that market. So NVIDIA, I think, does not need to worry about NVIDIA, AMD, all the AI ecosystem doesn't need to worry about the problems they can't solve. There's $5 trillion of problems they can't, right?
Yep. Yeah. Broadcom. Yeah.
Totally. Yes.
Yeah.
Totally.
Samsung. Yeah, so many other companies all kind of tied up in there with that as well. Yeah. Well, here, one of the things I want to do for the audience is I want to put this this chart up on screen, which I think shows us a little bit. This is a post from, I don't even know how to say that Kobayashi letter.
I think it's like Kobayashi.
Kobayashi. That sounds more correct, but it says, this is beyond insane. AI compute demand is now growing, and they say at over 2 times, but they have terrible math. It's actually 3.2 times the rate of Moore's law, which is assuming that Moore's law is still holding up at 2 times every 2 years, which is, I think, not necessarily a good assumption at this point in time. But it says, yeah, creating a massive shortage just to meet current demand. There's $500 billion that must be invested in data centers per year until 2030. And then they have this chart here. And so this is a chart of the, I believe it's basically the sizes of the number of parameters in models that are being trained.
Is that what the dot size is? So the The y-axis there is like the total compute required to train it, and the x-axis is just time. So yeah.
And I think that the flops required to train it is a function of parameters.
Sure.
And so then and the second line is just Moore's law, which is the 2 times growth every 2 years. And so it looks like we're creating more intense models to train 4.5, every year the models get 4.5 times more intense to train. And then Moore's law gives you 1.41 times growth in computing power if you were just following Moore's law. But obviously, thanks to Jensen Huang and NVIDIA, parallel computing is not necessarily bound by the constraints of Moore's law in the same way. Definitely when you factor in the extreme co-design. So anyways, I wanted to show this as an indication of why, this 4.5 times divided by 1.4 times is like a 3.2 times every year shortfall of Moore's law compared to growth in the size of the models that we want to train, which that compounds over time. So 3 times 1 year, 3 times again the next year, 3 times again the year after that. You get
it's
into
like a 3 times shortfall, a 9 times, a 27 times, an 81 times, right? The gap gets pretty big pretty fast, right?
Yeah, and so in 2030s, you're talking about hundreds of times, a shortfall of hundreds of times the amount of demand that you have for training AI compute compared to the returns that you got based on Moore's law. And so, what's your reaction to that when you think about the overall AI market?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's honestly been pretty obvious. The writing on the wall for Moore's law has been there for a long time. Like you just pointed out, Moore's law hasn't been at 2x every 2 years for a long time now. It's closer to 1.4. And just to be clear, that doesn't mean Moore's law is bad. It just means the era where transistor density and the amount of transistors you could pack on a single chip dominated the gains we got in compute is just over, right? That's just not where the gains are coming from. That's, so when Intel says Moore's law is alive and well, that sounds great. And then they don't deliver their chips, right? So, the companies that still believe Moore's law is alive and well tend to have missed the run up, and the product, haven't come out with a product to meet the demand for AI scaling laws, right? So that's actually a good transition into what's actually happening now. So Moore's law is one scaling law. It was actually a prediction by Gordon Moore that was hey, transistors seem to tend to double every year. So that's something the industry ended up shooting for, right? Transistors on a single chip every 2 years, excuse me. Today, AI has at least 3 scaling laws, and it really depends how you break up AI and the nuance you want to get into. But there's the scaling as a result of raising parameter counts, right? Just as an example, and getting more training data. So that's scaling with training, right? Bigger models tend to perform better. There's post-training scaling. So that's using reinforcement learning to improve a model's output after it's trained. So that's giving it better guardrails. That's giving it human feedback to refine its outputs. That'd be like putting a satellite dish on a radar, right? It's you're directing all of those tokens a specific way. And as a result, you're getting a much more powerful output in the correct direction, right? So that's post-training scaling. And then as of earlier this year, we have something called test time scaling, which is just a fancy way of saying inference is now able to be scaled with the number of tokens. So instead of one-shot answers where I give you a question, what is the temperature outside? And then you return the temperature outside, I can ask you a deeper question, hey, explain to me why water freezes at 32 degrees. And then you'll sit there and you'll rack your head. You'll think about where to start to give me the basic walkthrough. You'll break the problem down into step by steps. You'll solve each step, and then you'll bring it all back all together to give me a final coherent answer that walked me through maybe physics, maybe temperature, maybe the difference between Fahrenheit and Celsius, maybe what makes water such a special compound or whatever. You know what I mean? There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into that. And that all happens in inference, right? So now it takes more tokens. You can increase the number of tokens you're willing to spend on an answer and get a better output as a result. all three of those scaling laws, training, post-training, and inference, multiplied together, right? Because a better model that's better tuned and willing to spend more tokens on your prompt to give you a better response is benefiting from all three of those scaling laws. So even if they were all only as fast as Moore's law, that'd be 1.4 times 1.4 times 1.4, which I don't know if that gives you the 4.5, but you know, like that's what's happening here is you're multiplying three scaling laws.
So now that we've kind of got this framed as, you know, it's not really necessarily an either or between AMD versus NVIDIA, that still begs the question for, you know, someone who's interested in investing in this space. If you have to allocate, you know, how much money do I want to, if I'm putting new, you know, net new dollars into an investment, how do you think about the two different companies when you're deciding on allocating between NVIDIA today? And, you know, like they have enjoyed a lot of growth up to this point. Their multiples are, you know, relatively low compared to the growth that they're seeing. But there's a lot of growth. You know, I think it was Brad Gerstner on the All In podcast recently showed a little chart where, you know, in 2022 or 2023, both NVIDIA and AMD were making like $23-ish billion a year of annual revenue. And today AMD is making about 33. And of course, NVIDIA, I think like for 200 or something is like 220 or something. So it's like basically a 10x in revenue for NVIDIA compared to AMD doing a 1.5 times revenue over. You know, it's 1.5 times over a couple of years. That's not bad under normal conditions for normal markets. But this is anything but normal conditions and anything but a normal market. So like, it seems like there should be potentially more upside for AMD if they really can offer great products in this market segment, since they are behind the curve and maybe they're finally starting to be able to get on the wave. But like how do you think about these two companies as investments at this point in time? And then, I mean, we can talk about maybe some of these things individually, but like there's ecosystem factors, there's management factors, you know, Lisa versus Jensen. There's the pace of development that these different companies have. Then architectures, you've got AMD's chiplets versus NVIDIA's much larger monolithic designs. So we can let's just start with the high level of how you think about it, and then we can kind of dig into some of those more nitty-gritty elements of the stack.
So you said something interesting that like I want to pick on for a minute, and I'm not picking on you, right? But I do want to pick on this mindset that, you know, okay, one company is performing very well, the other one is not, relatively speaking at least, which means that second company has way more upside. So if I'm not a big sports guy, so if I get this sports analogy wrong, I apologize. Like, I make spreadsheets for fun, if you know what I'm saying. But if there's a football team that wins the Super Bowl every year, and they're constantly being matched up against the 16th best football team, right? Like bracket of 16, whatever, first versus last seed go together.
That took me out.
Why are you betting on seed 16? You know what I mean? Like, clearly the guy wearing all the Super Bowl rings is very good at football. He's probably the safe bet here, you know? So like when I hear AMD has increased their revenue by 50% and NVIDIA has increased their revenue by 1,000% and is still climbing, by the way, right? Like they still have earnings calls where they're delivering double or close to triple digit year over year revenue growth, right? Why? Where is the upside for AMD here? Like, it's a smaller company, so it has more room to grow to get to NVIDIA's valuation. Like, it seems to me that people who say that, again, not picking on you specifically, but people who say that, that's more of a gut feel than like a real analysis. Small company, lots of upside. Big company, not much more room to grow. But like, one thing I want to point out is I've been making videos on NVIDIA for about 4 years now, right? And if you rewind the clock to where NVIDIA was like $400 billion market cap, right? So just a little bit bigger than AMD is today. I got a lot of flack for saying this company is going to 10x, right? No one could, that's a $4 trillion valuation, right? And the reason I got a lot of flack is for exactly that argument. It's already so big. It's at all-time highs. No way it's getting bigger when there's a competitor 1/10 its size or half its size or whatever. It's going to eat its lunch. Same arguments, right? It turns out that NVIDIA grew from $400 billion to $4.5 trillion faster than AMD, 10x, you know, being much smaller or whatever relative to its valuation today, which is still only around, I want to say like $300 or $400 billion, even after this, frankly, comically massive OpenAI deal, right? So I just want to separate current size from future growth, because those two things almost have nothing like to do with each other if you like look back in time, right?
Yeah, that's a great point. And I mean, so how much
is that a real person
of the
that's a bot.
Assumptions that a lot of investors have about potential future growth really stem from thinking about the market as a fixed pie that someone's getting share out of, versus thinking about the market as something that is potentially, at least in the for the purposes of the next 5 years, uncapped upside?
Yeah, I think you just hit the nail on the head. Like,
How did the
that
guys
is
get the
why
victory? I
NVIDIA and
don't know.
AMD are not competing. And like AMD is going to do fine, but again, you just talked about a chart where people expect AMD's revenue to, you know, grow at a moderate pace. And I think that same chart actually had NVIDIA's revenue like capping off, you know, kind of growing steady up until 2027, and then like being relatively flat after that, which makes absolutely no sense to me, but we'll see in a couple years, right? Like, one thing I like doing is whenever I see, and sorry, I'll answer your question in a second. One thing I like doing is whenever an analyst gives like a pretty unintuitive prediction like that, is I like to go back and look at their other predictions and just, are they right? Like, are they good at spotting the trend? You know, for example, Michael Burry really has like a history of predicting things that are unlikely to happen, you know, so to speak, and then they happen, and you're like, okay, there's like Michael Burry, there's something to this guy, at least in the areas of real estate and whatever, right? So, you know, the analysts who think that NVIDIA is going to have flat revenue in 2027 thought that for 2026, 2025, 2024, you know what I mean? Like, they're the same analysts who predict next year is the year that NVIDIA's revenue flattens out, right?
It's almost like the chart that is somewhat famous, at least among the Tesla community, that Tony Seba has, that shows, you know, people's predictions of solar. And, you know, it's clearly on this exponential curve.
I love that
and then
chart.
every year
It's like
it's just like,
flat,
oh, it's going to be flat. Yeah.
This is where it's like, dude, like, you're not even pretending to look at the line you're trying to predict, right? Like, exactly. So
yeah, you're a linear machine in an exponential,
in an exponential world. Fantastic example. Like, when you edit this podcast, please put that chart in, because like, super duper relevant. Great call, right? Sorry, what was the original question? What are we
we were talking, I think the question was how much of that mindset by investors is due to just thinking that the market is a fixed size and it's all about someone has to get share. Like, this is classic Gary Black thinking, Wall Street thinking, versus like, this market is growing, and anyone who can really produce competitive products, like, will be able to do fine.
And it's definitely that second one, right? So like, just imagine you're you and me are in a pie eating contest, and we have one pie between us, and it's like, obviously whoever eats more pie wins. It's that simple, right? Like, whoever can eat you divide the pie into 8 slices. So if I can eat 5, I just win. My only goal is to eat 5, because that means you can't eat more than 3, right? Pizza, whatever, apple pie, pick your favorite pie. If we have that same context, and that pie is growing faster than we can eat it, we're no longer in a contest to eat, like, to just eat pie. We're in a contest just to like eat as much pie as we can, right? Just like whoever fills their belly the most wins, right? That's what's happening in AI. It's not, I'm just trying to eat 5 because that means you can only eat 3. It's, the pie is growing so fast, I need to figure out how to efficiently eat pie, right? It's a silly example, but I'm trying to like come up with a visualization we can all understand regardless of our background.
I get you, bro. Right? I get you.
I'm Patrick Lancaster with breaking news. Russia has fired its nuclear triad. Air, sea,
They're just trying to intimidate us.
And land-based missiles. Vladimir Putin has ordered what the Russian Ministry of Defense calls a massive exercise of the entire strategic nuclear force. And this is the first time this has been done in almost a year. Is this a threat to the West or a warning? Or is this just a yearly planned exercise being blown out of proportion by the media? Let's get into it. Vladimir Putin took part in a video conference where he confirmed the launching of these different platforms and how they are to test the readiness and the nuclear deterrent of the strategic nuclear force of Russia. And we can have a look at that video conference here.
Сегодня под вашим руководством проводится тренировка по управлению ядерными силами. Разрешите, начальник генерального штаба генерал Герасимов Валерий Васильевич доложит замысел проведения тренировки.
Да, добрый день, уважаемые товарищи. Сегодня у нас плановая, как это подчеркнуть, плановая тренировка по управлению ядерными силами, как только что доложил министр обороны. Давайте начнем работать. Пожалуйста, слово начальнику генерального штаба Вооруженных сил Российской Федерации Герасимову Валерию Васильевичу. Прошу вас, Валерий Васильевич.
Okay.
Товарищ Верховный
командующий,
на тренировке предлагается разработать порядок действий по санкционированию применения ядерного оружия. Практические действия будут осуществлять подвижный грунтовый ракетный комплекс «Яд».
That should be it. Delete. Okay, now we can delete all this, delete, get erase the proxies.
Now, these weren't some just off-the-wall missiles being fired as part of this exercise. As far as the land-based missiles were concerned, this is an intercontinental ballistic missile, the Yars, fired from Kamchatka. We can see it here.
Alright, erase the proxies.
Есть приказ.
Okay.
Дублирую приказ на пусковые установки. Приготовиться к совместным действиям. Совместным действиям готов. Проконтролировать правильность набора. Набор уверен. Внимание, расчет. Пуск. Есть пуск.
Got plenty of space still. We've been at war with him since like for a long time, bro. I don't know why these people are pretending. This is like news. That's so funny. Damn, bro.
And Russia's TUMS fired their cruise missiles in this test. And as far as from the sea, well, it was kind of from the sea and under the sea.
This guy's ready.
In one go. This launch was from the nuclear submarine Verdansk of the RM-29 intercontinental ballistic missile.
Боевая тревога, ракетная атака. Есть боевая тревога, ракетная атака. Глубина старта 75 метров.
This was one day ago, bro.
Today we're answering the question. With AMD's RX 580 now being available in even the sub £30 and $30 region, is this really the best graphics card you can buy, even if you're taking a chance on one that hasn't been tested?
Yeah.
Right, so I mentioned in my last
I can't even like the video. What? Okay. Now let's type in here. 9060 XT. I don't know why, but let's make a video. Oh, we're live. Okay, gotta go to history. Okay. Let's go to our history. There we go. Let's see, can we do a remix? Collab, green screen cut. All right, let's see how this reacts. Unable to download video. What? Oh man. For my streaming PC, I'm using a RX 580 as well. It works just fine. to my main audio PC with the streaming. It's all good.
Works just fine. The best value cards we bought this year, this RX 480, which was what, 3 months ago now.
For my streaming PC, I'm using a RX 580 as well. Works just fine.
The best value cards we bought this year.
Fast Racing Xavier 25.
Hey, what's up, bro?
Said. Hello.
Hey, good afternoon. How you been, man? Thank you for tuning in. Just uploading a video to this reply. You want to see the rest of the video?
Today we're answering the question. With
So
AMD's
this is the
RX
video
580
that
now being
I'm
available
replying
in
to.
even the sub £30
I did the
Fast
same
Racing
video
Xavier
of the
25.
RX 580.
really the best
Said.
graphics card you can
I won
buy.
5 games yesterday.
Oh yeah,
Fast Racing
congratulations, bro,
Xavier
on Warzone.
25. Said. On Warzone.
Alright, I think I got like 2 dubs maybe. But it's all good, it's all good. Dub City, let's go. Congratulations, Javier. Fast Racing Javier from YouTube is live. Is in the live with me, bro. Appreciate it, man. So I did a review of this GPU right here.
Even if you're taking
It's
a
like the
chance
best
on one that hasn't
GPU
been
you can buy for
tested.
the money.
Right, so I mentioned in my last video that
So
I
I'm
picked up
replying
an RX
to this guy
580 for
with,
just north of 20 quid. And
a
it did
video.
arrive in this actually quite nicely packaged parcel, but from that video that I just put out on the RX 460, lots of people were curious on how the RX 580 is doing, because we've never looked at one on this channel, and given how many people are asking, I thought, you know what, why don't we bring this video forward so we can actually take a look at the card. So the card itself cost me about £22.78, at least according to my eBay receipt here, which makes this surprisingly good value, given that the RX 460 we also looked at was going for about the same price. And that's very literally the point I was making in that video, is that you can get these for next to nothing, as long as you're looking at auctions and not looking at the buy it now price. And saying that, the buy it now price on these is also fine. But why don't we get this thing open, see what it's actually showed up as, and see if it actually works. Because I must admit, the listing did say it had a couple of odd faults, but it did say it was a working graphics card. But then again, we've also looked at graphics cards.
Hope you're having a good day,
faults and they
bro.
didn't
Thank you
work.
for hanging out. Alright, I'm just uploading this video.
It's
We're
a
gonna
Sapphire
start
version, 8
gaming here in a
GB
little bit.
GDDR5 with an overclock mode and dual BIOS. Well, this is our RX 580, so we've got a Sapphire Pulse version. I think Pulse was the cheaper option on the range, but it is at least the 8GB version. And you can see what they were
I
advertising
got a lot
at
of
the time.
hate for
DirectX
doing
12,
that
that's still
video.
relevant. Vulkan, that's still
I guess I
relevant.
should have
didn't
done it
realise
like
there
he
was a
did. They just
FreeSync 2
copied
at
the
some
same
point,
layout
but
and
that's also probably
copied,
quite relevant.
not
And
word for
Relive,
word,
which I
but
don't
the
think
same
anyone
things
bothers using, they
he's
just use
saying.
OBS. But some people did. What else have
Or
we
just
got?
talk
The
about
heart,
it,
the
whatever.
beat, the game, Pulse. That's a bit of a crap slogan, to be honest. Nothing too exciting
But
here.
yeah,
It's got the
guys, I'm using
specifications
it
of the
there.
card. Well, let's just make sure
I
the
even
card
got
is
2
actually in
boxes.
here.
Let me see.
We've got the box in the box. We've got our installation guide.
got two
and
boxes
then I'm
of the
assuming
same
this is
thing.
our graphics card here. We've got
I opened
anything
one
else
up
in there?
because
No,
I
we've not got like a
installed it.
driver disc, but I don't even think these came with a driver disc. So here is the graphics card itself, and it's an actual
Who's
RX
crying
580,
out
unlike
there?
the last one we ordered that was actually just a knockoff of one of these that was completely broken. It was
It's
a
a
fun
very
video,
beautiful card.
but it wasn't exactly great for performance, and this looks
You got a
much
beautiful-
better built. I can
one
actually
of the
see
beautiful
it's got
cards.
VRAM cooling already. Doesn't
Fast
look like it's got any
Racing Xavier
physical damage,
25
because even then the last one
said,
didn't. Still
Oh
got
man,
You're the
non-tamper
best.
screws.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. I try to do the best I can do.
It looks like whoever
Thank
owned
you, man.
this
Thank
actually
you.
kept it in nice condition. So if there is anything wrong with it, it might just be
So
overheating.
okay, let's start gaming. I already did what I had to do. I don't think we need to. Well, I do need to upload a video. I just have to download it first. Wow, let's turn on the gaming PC. I'll do that video, download the video. Hopefully you're having a good day, bro. I use these headphones for comfortable, because they're very comfortable. Okay, that's loading in fast. As you can see, it's turns on very fast. Oh, I'm already at the desktop. Okay. All right, I'm gonna download this one first. It's gonna take a while. No, this has to go like this. I have to copy it and then go to documents. Oh no, where? Internal storage. Don't go. I go to downloads. All right, there. It's already copying. All right. Thank you guys. Thank you for hanging out. Appreciate it so much. All right, let's check here. Let's check at the. Let me switch. Let me switch scenes. Oh, I forgot to have to connect my streaming. My gaming PC to my streaming PC. Okay. That should be good.
I am extremely
Internal camps for the homeless people.
Our country has to be.
We'll check it out later. What's this? Trump isn't building just a ballroom temple.
Probably the finest ballroom ever.
Sure.
In this video, I'm going to show you some of the most important software.
I just wanted to click on them so they can be in my history. All right, we're done with that. Put this over here so I can see everybody's chat. Okay. You guys can see me better over here, right? You guys like seeing that better? Let me know if the audio's off or something. I'm using a regular mic instead of my studio mic, and I'm using just a regular mic. It's still good. It's nothing wrong with it. Except it doesn't sound as clear and bright. And with the effects, I can't put effects on it. But I can, it's just a little bit off. I'll be off a little bit. Okay, oh man. Trying to put this cord up. Okay, the video is 1/4 of the way. So how you guys doing today? Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate it, Mr. Javier Racing. Fast Racing Javier. Javier. Alright, quit that. I don't need that. I don't need that. Or that. Oh, I gotta turn on the DS4Windows. And then I gotta turn on my Bluetooth. I want to run it with Bluetooth just for now. Okay. Added device. I haven't added anything. Okay. Nothing's popping up yet. I think I gotta leave these two buttons pressed. Yep. Let's go. There you go. Ready, done. That was fast. You see it just locks in. Okay. Play. Alright, it's loading up. That's good. I haven't set up a wireless controller. I was just using the cable. But that's fast. Alright. Okay, now you guys can check out what's the event, what's all about. What, purchase Call of Duty to access. Wrong account, but okay. I got 137 tokens. Okay, not bad. I can buy it all. Okay. Welcome in, Fast Racing Javier. Ooh, chupacabras. So scary. It looks more like a demon. I guess that looks like it's a chupacabras right there. Okay. So I need a little bit more to go. Let's go. Let's go into Resurgence. Let's try see how it goes there. So nothing should change. Graphics borderless. I think it runs better on exclusive, but let me just try it for now. Everything should be good there. Apply. Okay, it's on custom. It should be on low, except for the textures.
Fast Racing Xavier 25 said on solos.
Okay, you won on solos yesterday on Warzone. Okay, everything should be fine. I'll change this back to 100 if the aim assist doesn't lock in that good. But welcome in, guys. Welcome in. Thank you, guys. Thanks for tuning in. Appreciate you guys. Hopefully you guys can hear me well. I'm using a different mic. If it sounds dry, it's because it's just a different mic. I have two mics, except I'm using the one that isn't for singing. It's for podcasting.
Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the sky.
I mean, you could sing into it. You just have to tweak it a lot. Not like my studio mic where you can tweak it all you want. Okay, it feels good. It feels good.
We're gonna touch him, right?
What? I'm clutching.
Enemy soldier incoming.
I'm streaming.
Hey Zang, I'm here. Shut up already. We've got a Mexican.
Green light.
You get offended by something?
There are illegal Mexican immigrants involved.
Why you get offended, bro?
Enemy dropping into the AO.
He got offended because I'm streaming. That's a hater right there. That's a person that doesn't have no morals. He's not close to God. He doesn't wake up saying thanks God to, or saying thanks to God for another new day. This is one of the people that starts hating on their parents because the whole world's crumbling.
Survive to redeploy fallen teammates. Kill to
He
bring
starts blaming other people for his problems.
Set a drop point to your squad soldier.
Poor guy. Alright, let's see. So something happened on Twitch. He stopped streaming, I guess. It's alright. Somebody must have reported on me on Twitch or something.
Additional contract online.
Let's see how the aim assist works.
Zero gas out. You have reinforcements inbound.
I can tell there's something weird with the way the DS4 behaves on this PC.
Inserting additional armor.
There's an airstrike available.
Target area marked. You're cleared up.
I'll take that. No hits. No aim assist, that's for sure.
Your squad mate went AWOL. Timer reduced.
I have no aim assist.
Inserting
Wow.
additional armor. Frag out.
Zero aim assist.
Enemy soldier incoming.
Reloading.
Good kill. Marking the rest of that squad on your attack map. Get hunting. All bounty targets KIA.
Hostile armor broken.
Your squad's in the safe zone.
I gotta check.
Inserting
I gotta check why no aim assist.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
I thought I fixed it last night. So yeah, that should be it. I was gonna leave it dynamic and just change it just so you can see if it reacts or something. That's kind of strange. I think I gotta update something. Oh, I gotta reinstall the app.
Drop inbound.
I think that's what's going on. I like this gun. It's fun.
What's your target
No
ID?
aim
Enemy
assist.
soldier incoming.
Takes more than that to finish me.
Enemy destroyed.
Someone else move
Use your
fiber.
attack map to hunt down the rest of them.
Okay, it locks in.
Inserting additional armor.
10 remaining. Keep pushing.
Oh.
I'm gonna come show you my
Incoming
beautiful,
shots.
my beautiful meal.
Kill confirmed. We've located the rest of them.
Changing mags. Check that aim! Shot for brains. Changing mag. Inserting additional armor.
Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the skies.
Loading new mag.
Oh, we got a 2-boxer.
Your squad made it to the safe
Like, it
zone.
doesn't want to lock in.
Mark the remaining operators from that squad. Hunt them down. Target
Reloading.
down. Marking the rest of them.
Hostile armor broken.
Well, the aim assist works up to a certain point. I think they just lowered it. Oh.
Changing mags.
Enemy dropping into the AO.
See, it locks in.
Good kill.
Let's get
Mark the
more.
rest of that squad on your attack map. Get hunting. Enemy destroyed. Use your attack map to hunt down the rest of them. I'll drive. Your squad mates back on station. Good work.
Devansh Karlupia.
Hey, what's up, Devansh?
Sorry sir, I have to leave back there.
Oh, no, it's okay, bro. I understand. You don't have to be sorry, bro. Thanks for tuning back in, bro. It's all good.
Enemy soldier incoming.
You know we're here for you guys.
Buy station prices are adjusted.
Even though sometimes it's hard for me to go live, too.
Get down. Strike. Switching mag.
Devansh Karlupia.
Enemy decoy
Said,
incoming.
I am all done and free.
Oh, okay, okay. That's good, bro.
Surgeon's window is ending. Watch your six. Kill confirmed. We've located the
Nice,
rest.
I got someone.
Under fire.
We've got 10 squads
Inserting
active in the
additional
field.
armor.
3 points, let's
On
go.
my final mag.
No, you're not. Quit your whining.
Enemies are dropping into the area. Watch the skies. All squad mates are in the safe zone.
I'm just playing versus bots. But you're free to join with me on my I'm on my other account, my new account. Well, the aim assist kind of works. I think I have to like turn it off and turn it on manually.
You've got time for another bounty.
Maybe DS4
Primary
is
objective
broken.
complete. All targets eliminated.
Get some haters in the building.
No more second chances. Your squad mate is redeploying. Well done.
Changing mags.
Get in there, bro.
15 by.
And then comes the hackers.
Devansh Karlupia said, "You got Trump in building."
Yeah, I got another a Trumper. He must love his Trump president.
Enemy dropping into the AR.
The most corrupted president.
You've made it to the top 5.
He faked his own
5 squads still
what do you call
operational
it?
in the AR.
Assassination attempt.
Snipe. Someone has a mic. Someone has a mic. Big bowler.
Hostile shooter.
We can shoot now, guys. Alright.
Bro, you're not funny. You can turn that soundboard off.
I'm not gonna turn it off. I have freedom of speech, bro.
Oh, we got a Mexican up in here.
Oh, it's not Mexican, but yeah, sure, bro.
You sound as if
Nah, I am Mexican.
Through shadows they stride a network untold. Trump and the
You didn't like my song, bro.
guiding secrets with unyielding might to control destinies concealed from sight.
Oh my god, it's
6666 as their emblem and sign. Through AI stargates they blur the line.
We're so
Whispers
sorry.
of power in the darkness unfurl. A mysterious force to conquer the world.
I feel like there are illegal Mexican immigrants involved in this. You know what? You're probably right, right?
Yup. At least I work harder than you, bro. At least I can make some mason. Work.
Yeah, what the fuck?
At least I can work on the sun without complaining.
Literally nobody.
3 squads left. I can help you. Stay alert.
Inserting additional armor.
Devansh
He
Karlupia
got upset.
said, "Then they have no taste."
I can help you. Be advised. Still have squad mates outside the safe zone.
Incoming shots.
Primary
What?
objective complete. Good work.
Wow, we won against the dudes that were complaining. Really, bro? How?
I feel like there are illegal Mexican immigrants involved in this.
How did we get that, bro? Wow. All that yapping about Mexicans?
Through shadows they stride a network untold. Trump and the Illuminati with a grip so bold, guiding secrets with unyielding might to control destinies concealed from sight. With 6666 as their emblem and sign. Through AI stargates
We got
they
it,
blur the
bro. We got
line.
it.
Whispers of power in the darkness unfurl. A mysterious force to conquer the world. With 666.
Okay. You guys see that? Alright, let's go to the bench. The bench is ready. Lock and loaded. Okay, it's gonna be a hard match because we just won, so we just gotta be careful. Gotta stick close. The guys that were yapping and talking so bad about us. Oh, we got a Mexican. They got wiped by the Mexican, bro. How did I win that, bro? I think the system let me win that or something. They lost, bro. They were just they were talking too much. That's why. That's what happens when you talk too much. In a game, you're not supposed to talk. It's all good, bro. GG. They got hacked by a Mexican on the aim assist, bro. With the aim assist. I can't believe I got that, bro. Okay, we got a clip and not a recording.